Chapter 1449. With one punch, the opponent was easily defeated. As for the other 4 senior brothers and sisters, the situation was the same. They used overwhelming strength to force their opponents back without any ability to retaliate. It could be said to be an all-round suppression, a complete one-sided suppression. It wasn't that these prodigies were suppressing them, but rather being ruthlessly suppressed by them with no way to resist. However, they weren't like Yi Tianyun, who could kill them in one move. The fact that they were able to ruthlessly suppress these so-called geniuses in a crushing manner was already enough to shock everyone. This wasn't just shocking, it was also a slap in the face. What prodigies? They were so weak in front of them. Boom, boom, boom. Shocking explosions rang out as one opponent after another was sent flying out of the stage. The first batch of opponents were all defeated, none of them winning. Especially when they won in a clean and efficient manner, without the slightest bit of sloppiness. They suppressed their opponents with every move and won the first round in a perfect and invincible manner. The first victory of the first round shocked everyone. It was an all-around crushing. How could they not be shocked? This was beyond their expectations. They thought they could suppress them and slap the face of the great Devis. Now it seemed like they were wrong, and it was a huge mistake. They couldn't win in one round, not even one set. All 5 of them successfully defeated their opponents. Grand Elder, the first batch is over. We can continue with the next batch. The great Devis indicated that they could continue. Grand Elder's face darkened. He didn't expect to lose so cleanly. It was simply the effect of being completely crushed. All right, then let's choose the second batch. Grand Elder continued to choose the second batch. As they thought they could win in one go, there was no second batch to choose from and they could only choose again on the spot. They have some ability. We must defeat them this time. Grand Elder felt even more displeased and immediately arranged for the strongest elites of this level to come over. The one arranged for Yi Tianyun was still at God Monarch level 7, but much stronger than before. Be it bloodline or other aspects of strength, they were all stronger. Initially, they didn't think they needed to arrange for the strongest, just an upper level would be enough. Who knew they would be easily crushed? After the arrangements were made, they went up one after another. The arrogance on their faces could be seen. If arrogance could materialize, the surroundings would probably be filled with arrogance. To be able to defeat junior brother Long Hui, you do have some ability, but it ends here. Everything will end in my hands. I'll let you know what kind of position you're in. Before he could finish his sentence, an afterimage had already rushed in front of him. Before he could react, he only felt a wave of pain, and then he lost consciousness. His outcome was no different from Sir God Long Hui's. He was sent flying by a punch and he crashed into the group of disciples, causing a large number of them to collapse. There were quite a number of cultivators gathered around. Basically, if he were to smash down, he would hit at least a few of them. Moreover, they didn't know how to dodge. Instead, they wanted to catch him. Who knew that the impact would be so strong that they almost fainted? You talk a lot of nonsense. Where the hell did you put it? I'll tell you to scram right now. Yi Tianyun looked at them coldly and said, Yi Tianyun easily defeated these so-called geniuses and took the lead again, becoming the first to finish. As for the other 4, Celestial Venerable Sword C and Celestial Venerable Dragon Cry had fallen into bitter battles. The genius disciples that were sent out again were indeed somewhat capable. However, a bitter battle didn't mean that they couldn't win. As for Celestial Venerable Yu Qian and Celestial Venerable Power Sky, they similarly suppressed their opponents with relatively strong strength and finally won. Behind them, Celestial Venerable Sword C and Celestial Venerable Dragon Cry also won this round. With that, they immediately became the cream of the crop among their peers. Grand Elder had already sent out his strongest genius. If that didn't work, it meant that he had to send out geniuses of a higher level to suppress them. How can they still win like this? Grand Elder and the rest had ugly expressions. They had already sent out their most outstanding genius. How could they still lose? They won, they won. The Domain Empress was extremely excited. She was naturally very happy to see the person sent by her son win this round. Cultivation Sky Domain Lord turned to look at her, and she obediently shut her mouth. Cultivation Sky Domain Lord frowned and looked at Tianyun in disbelief. He didn't expect that the disciple taught by his son would be so valiant. Could it be that our decisions have been wrong all this while? Cultivation Sky Domain Lord began to doubt himself. Or rather, he began to doubt the rules of the Cultivation Sky's celestial realm. If these rules couldn't bring about the best benefits, then they should be abolished. However, he had to wait and see what the outcome would be. There were many things that he couldn't decide on his own. After all, there were still so many elders and deacons. They all had some decision-making power. Good. The vast divine sect's morale soared. He was very excited. These were the disciples he had nurtured. Apart from Tianyun, who didn't teach them much, the rest were taught by him personally. The strength they displayed now exceeded his expectations. Then he looked at Grand Elder with a burning gaze and said, "Now, you need to send out stronger opponents. In other words, we will have to fight someone of a higher level." Grand Elder and the rest's gazes darkened. In theory, they didn't want to reach this step. Even if they won, they wouldn't feel that it was very glorious. If they couldn't beat their opponents at the same level, it could only mean that their overall level was too low. However, they couldn't admit defeat now. They could only bite the bullet and send their people up. "All right, as you wish." Grand Elder immediately sent out stronger geniuses. Tianyun's opponent was an 8th-level divine monarch, slightly stronger. As for them, they also sent a stronger genius. This meant that Heavenly Venerable Sword C and the rest were in danger. They were facing an upper-level Heavenly Venerable. When facing an opponent a level higher than them, all of them had grave expressions. This wasn't an easy thing. Fighting someone of a higher level was often the most dangerous. It was easier to lose. However, it depended on how much strength they had left. For example, Heavenly Venerable Sword C and Heavenly Venerable Dragon Cry probably couldn't win this match. When fighting someone of the same level, it was already very difficult for them. Now that they were fighting someone of a higher level, the difficulty would be even higher. This time, we won. Don't blame us. Back then, you swore to defeat all the geniuses of the Cultivation Sky's celestial realm. Grand Elder said solemnly. Chapter 1450. The Great Devis's words made them look up to him. They had thought that he would say a few more words of rebuttal. But it seemed that they had overthought things. The Great Devis was a man of his word. No matter what he said before, it would not change now. Even if they lost, they had to carry out this belief. If they lost, they would have to bear all the consequences themselves. All right. Grand Elder's eyes were complicated, but he did not waver. He did not want the Great Devis to break the rules. Even now, they showed no signs of wavering. They did not want to change the rules that had been in place for many years. Nothing could be accomplished without rules. The rules of the past could not be changed. With a command, the match began immediately. The battle had only just begun, but Heavenly Venerate Dragon Cry and the others were already in an extremely bitter fight. If this continued, they would lose without a doubt. Their opponents were not only a level higher than them, but their talent was even more shocking. It was too difficult to win. Therefore, the outcome could only be defeat. But Heavenly Venerate Force Sky and Heavenly Venerate Yuqian were locked in battle with their opponents. For a moment, no one knew what the outcome would be. On the other hand, Tianyun still didn't have any explosive power. He just casually kicked the opponent in front of him, and the opponent was directly kicked away, easily killed. Too weak. This is the genius you speak of? He said indifferently. Send someone stronger. This is still too weak. Tianyun once again stole all the limelight. Although it was a Divine Lord level battle, it was still extremely difficult to skip levels. The difficulty was about the same as a Heavenly Venerate level battle. But Tianyun still defeated his opponent in an instant. There was no difference. A group of people stared at this side. They thought that Tianyun would also fall into a hard fight, but who would have thought that it would be a one-shot? Like a gust of wind, he kicked his opponent like a ball, flying towards them. Grand Elder and the others' faces darkened. They suddenly thought of what the Great Devis had said. That was Yi Tianyun would be the new domain master. In this case, it was normal that they could not discuss it with common sense. However, they didn't say anything about it. Instead, they decided to watch the battle between Heavenly Celestial Force and the others. Once it was over, they would decide who to send. Heavenly Venerate Force roared as his mighty god bloodline burst forth. He violently thrashed his opponent and won this round. It was the same for Heavenly Venerable Yu Qian. She didn't have an astonishing bloodline, but she had a stubborn strength. She had forcefully defeated her opponent, barely. They had won by a narrow margin and had almost been defeated. 3 out of the 5 won. Among them, Empyrean Yu Qian won against a late-stage Upper Empyrean powerhouse. It was simply inconceivable. Didn't that mean that he had won? Of course not. The late Upper Empyrean powerhouse that the Great Elders sent out would not be the strongest one. Being able to send a late-stage Upper Heavenly Venerate opponent was already a little embarrassing. Sending their strongest opponent was simply too embarrassing. We won. Heavenly Sovereign Force and the others roared out. Their victory was the most difficult, so they felt even more deeply moved. Yi Tianyun wasn't as excited as them. He just smiled slightly. He had only displayed a portion of his strength. If he had displayed his entire strength, wouldn't they all be shocked? This round is your victory, but there's still the next round. The Great Elder poured a bucket of cold water on them and said in a deep voice, "If you still win this round, then it'll be considered your victory." Heavenly Venerate Force and the others were startled, but they didn't say anything. According to the promise that the Great Devas had previously made, they could indeed continue to make arrangements. Defeating all the geniuses meant that they could continue to send out people. Those who were originally sent out were not the most outstanding, so naturally, they wouldn't win. As long as they defeated their most outstanding genius, they would officially acknowledge it. Alright, then let's compete in the last round. Heavenly Venerate Force and the others nodded their heads, intending to accept this battle. Following this, they adjusted their breathing and consumed recovery pills. Only after they had fully recovered would they continue to the next round. This time, they had sent out their strongest genius. It could be said that they were the strongest geniuses at every stage. First, the genius that Heavenly Venerate Force faced was at the late-stage Upper Heavenly Venerate level. In fact, he was the opponent that Heavenly Venerate Yu Qian had just defeated. Heavenly Venerate Yu Qian had barely defeated him. Now that it was Heavenly Venerate Force's turn, it would be extremely difficult. Heavenly Venerate Yu Qian's opponent was a brand new super genius. His cultivation base was also at the late-stage Upper Heavenly Venerate level. However, the power that he displayed was completely different. A special energy was slowly released from his body, forming a special space within a specific range. Yi Tianyun looked up and immediately felt that this person was very powerful, and it was an extremely powerful level. Ninefold Heavenly Venerate possesses the power of the 9 dragons bloodline. Can release the power of 9 dragons in a single breath to destroy heaven and earth. The power of the 9 dragons bloodline? Yi Tianyun was taken aback. Although this was also a dragon bloodline, it was definitely a top 5 bloodline in terms of quality. Just this bloodline power alone was far superior to Heavenly Venerate Yu Qian's bloodline. The cultivation celestial realm naturally didn't judge a genius based on the testing stone steel. The stone steel was only one of the factors. The other factor was the bloodline. If the bloodline was ranked at the top, there was no need to talk about it at all. The testing stone steel wouldn't even be needed. The bloodline ranking was more reliable than the testing stone steel and had existed for a longer time. No one knew who ranked it, but judging from the past, it was indeed at a heaven-defying level. No one could resist it. Looks like senior sister Yu Qian is in danger. Yi Tianyun frowned. The cultivation celestial realm was indeed powerful. They even had geniuses with such a level of bloodline. It wouldn't be an injustice to lose if they met. You should be concerned about what kind of opponent you're facing. At that moment, a cold voice came from ahead, drawing Yi Tianyun's attention. He saw a handsome young man standing in front of him. An icy aura was released from his body. It was obvious that he cultivated ice attribute martial arts. Tianyun sized him up and smiled. I don't need to know. I only need to know one thing. You can't defeat me. Arrogant. The young man sneered. Do you think you're invincible just because you defeated 1 or 2 opponents? It seems that you've really inherited the 4th elder's arrogance and pride. But I'll let you know soon. Bang! Chapter 1451. A super genius at the peak Divine Lord level was still sent flying by Yi Tianyun's kick. She didn't even have the slightest ability to resist. It looked like a sneak attack, but it was actually so fast that the opponent couldn't react and defeated her in 1 move. This situation caused an uproar once again. They were all thick-skinned enough to raise their opponent to the peak Divine Lord level. Not only was she at the peak Divine Lord level, but she was also the strongest genius at the peak level. In the end, she was still defeated without the slightest bit of resistance. This made them wonder if this senior brother of theirs was a fake senior brother. Tianyun's side was shocking, but Heavenly Venerate Yuqian's side was basically suppressed. Her opponent was just too strong. The powerful 9 dragons bloodline attacked in a variety of ways, and the power of dragons surrounded her from all sides. Heavenly Venerate Yuqian was pushed back again and again until she was completely blown away. The great Devis quickly flew over and reached out to grab Heavenly Venerate Yuqian. The power of dragons wrapped around her quickly dissipated, leaving nothing behind. Master, I'm sorry. 2 drops of tears rolled down Heavenly Venerate Yuqian's eyes. She didn't expect to fail in the end. She didn't win for her master. It's fine. You've done very well. It's just a burden Master has imposed on you. The great Devis waved his hand, and a light shrouded Heavenly Venerate Yuqian as he started to heal her. His mentality had already changed. Or rather, it had changed before he came. He had been arrogant at the time, thinking that everything would succeed and that he could change the stubbornness of the Heaven Cultivation's celestial domain. Now, it seemed that he was still too young. He had let his disciple fall into such humiliation. This wasn't the result he wanted. Heavenly Venerate Yuqian fainted. She had held on for a long time before she was defeated. Her body had suffered very serious injuries. If this had continued, she would have died. If her opponent hadn't sent her flying out of the arena, she would have died on the arena. She was unwilling to admit defeat. Heavenly Venerate Yuqian was that stubborn. She wouldn't give up until she died. However, she would lose here. In the final battle of 5, only Yi Tianyun could win. I won. Does this count as Master's side winning? Yi Tianyun interrupted, his voice echoing throughout the hall. First Elder and the others were startled. Only now did they remember that Yi Tianyun had won. First Elder had said that as long as they could win this round, it would be a victory for them. It didn't matter if Yuqian lost, but if Yi Tianyun won, it would be the final victory. Heavenly Venerate you to the Heavenly Venered Divine Vener heaved. At this moment, everyone's gazes were focused on him. If it was as he said, then it would truly be a victory for the boundless heavenly deities. Well, you could say that. It was a bit difficult for the Grand Elder to answer. However, what he had just said could only become reality. The strongest genius of a divine monarch was defeated, and they couldn't call out any stronger genius, unless they let a heavenly master deal with Yi Tianyun. However, this was not the same realm, but a major realm. Heavenly Venerate Sword C and the others were still Heavenly Venerates, so the meaning was different. However, it was different now. Divine Lord against Heavenly Venerate, that was a major realm. The difficulty was obvious. At this moment, one of the youths stood out and looked coldly at Yi Tianyun. I'm stronger. Come and have a match with me. This man was also at the peak divine monarch realm. At a glance, Yi Tianyun knew that this man's overall level was not as good as the previous one. However, they refused to admit defeat. They wanted to fight with Yi Tianyun again until everyone lost. Alright, come on up. Yi Tianyun gestured for him to come up. Since that was the case, he wouldn't reject anyone. He would fight as many as they came. First Elder didn't have time to stop him. That youth charged up and poured out all the anger in his heart. He aimed his sword at Yi Tianyun. He poured all his strength into it. With one sword, it was like 10,000 swords attacking, locking down a large area. There was no way to escape. Lee Tianyun still didn't use any fancy moves. He just turned over and kicked the man, quickly found the flaw in the man's defense, and easily broke the man's defense and kicked him away. Next, Lee Tianyun's right hand was behind his back. He stretched out his left hand and gestured for them to continue attacking. He looked calm and relaxed. Against a godlord, a super godlord title could instantly kill any godlord. No matter how invincible a godlord genius was, they would have to kneel in front of this title. With this buff, not only would his damage increase, but he could also have an absolute suppression effect. This was equivalent to 100 times damage. How could he fight like that? Let me! Another genius roared and charged up. They were extremely unhappy with Lee Tianyun. How could they be happy about destroying the testing stone tablet? Especially when they thought that their talent might not be at this level, they felt very unhappy. But anger couldn't increase their strength. They could only become cannon fodder and were sent flying by Lee Tianyun's kick. This is the so-called genius you were talking about? I am only a 6th grade talent. You guys are at least 7th grade talents, right? You even told me to be in the right position. I think you are the ones who should be in the right position. Lee Tianyun snorted. Good talent can give you a higher starting point. But it doesn't mean that you are the kings of this era. Lee Tianyun's aura surged, pressuring them so much that they kept retreating. Their legs were trembling. Just this aura alone was enough to make them not dare to continue fighting. Let me. There were still people who bit the bullet and wanted to fight. They didn't want to be suppressed by a 6th grade talent opponent. All of them wanted to charge over and defeat Lee Tianyun in a continuous battle. But when they wanted to continue, First Elder snorted, "Enough!" At this time, the disciples stopped, their faces filled with indignation. Were they going to lose just like that? Your standard doesn't seem to be at the level of a godlord. It is very likely that you are hiding your strength. Your true standard might be at the level of a heavenly venerable. But now, you are hiding your strength. I estimate that you are at the level of a godlord. First Elder didn't admit defeat but turned to other aspects. He thought that Lee Tianyun's true cultivation was at the level of a heavenly venerable. He was deliberately hiding his cultivation to suppress them. Wouldn't a godlord win against a heavenly venerable? This way they could complete their mission. Chapter 1452. Lee Tianyun thought that Great Elder would admit defeat, but it seemed that he was naive. This old fellow didn't want to admit defeat at all. Now that he saw a point, he immediately grabbed onto it tightly. Very good, then you can test my cultivation to see if I'm a divine lord or a celestial venerable. Lee Tianyun stretched out his hand, his gaze very cold. He was naturally not afraid of being tested. His cultivation was divine lord, there was no change. At this time, the great Devis stood out, blocking in front of Lee Tianyun, and said solemnly, "Looks like you guys still think that I will use this method to muddle through?" This was no longer a problem of divine lord and celestial venerable cultivation, but a problem of personal principles. From the side, it was equivalent to saying that the great Devis was cheating. How could he tolerate it? That's hard to say. God knows if you will use this point. Knowing that you can't win the battle, you choose to cheat. Great Elder started to slander the great Devis, feeling that in order to win, he would do anything. I, Hauhin, will never do such a thing in my life. Maybe I've done many wrong things, but I'm definitely not this kind of despicable person, especially towards cultivating the god realm. The great Devis's tone was cold to the extreme as he stared at Great Elder, wishing that he could slap him to death with one slap. Whether it is or not, we'll know after the test. If you don't let me check, then you have a guilty conscience. Great Elder still didn't give up, feeling that there was definitely a problem. Otherwise, how could he have such heaven-defying ability to beat them until they couldn't fight back? No matter what cultivation, they were all settled in one move, which made them feel that it was very inconceivable. Celestial Venerable Swordsea and the others at the side also felt very angry. Could it be that they were all blind? What weapon was so powerful that it could hide its cultivation so deeply? With so many celestial gods staring at it, it would definitely be seen through. On the other hand, their expressions were even more strange. So what if he defeated a divine lord? This little junior brother of theirs killed celestial venerables like slaughtering dogs, easily beheading a large group. Not to mention jumping levels to kill a divine lord, jumping levels to easily kill a celestial venerable was not a problem. Therefore, all of them had full confidence in Yi Tianyun. They were just here to serve as a foil. Who knew that he would be suspected of Yi Tianyun not being a god monarch? What if you're still a divine monarch after the inspection? The great Devis looked at him coldly. If he's a divine monarch, it proves that there's no problem. Even if fourth elder has always been upright and upright, many people still feel that this is inconceivable. If we don't inspect it, how can we quell their doubts? Great elder looked around. Many people indeed had doubts about this. Their top divine lord geniuses could even withstand an early-stage lower Empyrean, and they could even deal with them. But now, he was defeated by a 7th-level god monarch. How could they believe it? Perhaps he was a genius at the late-stage lower heavenly venerable realm who had his aura suppressed by some treasure, causing others to mistake him for a divine monarch cultivation when he was actually at the heavenly venerable level. How could he fight like that? All right, I'll let you inspect it. If he's really a divine monarch, I hope you apologize for your actions just now. The great Devis said sternly. That's an insult to me. If there's really no problem, then I'll apologize for my actions. Great elder didn't waste time. He immediately went in front of Yi Tianyun, grabbed his arm, and started inspecting his body. After a simple inspection, he was stunned. His cultivation was really at the 7th-level god monarch, no more, no less. There was no change at all. No, that's impossible. If he's really a 7th-level god monarch, how could he have such shocking power? All of us here are elite geniuses who went through many rounds of selection. It's impossible for him to be defeated so easily. Great elder took a few steps back, feeling incredulous. Didn't this mean that the disciples nurtured by the great Devis were many levels stronger than their disciples? Seeing this, second elder quickly came over, grabbed Yi Tianyun's arm, and started inspecting. After a simple round, they didn't see anything special. Forget about hidden treasures, they didn't even detect any treasures. He's really a 7th-level god monarch. Second elder was also shocked. Previously, he was the same as great elder, holding a skeptical attitude. Now that they really checked the truth, they were deeply shocked. Of course, they couldn't detect the planets in Yi Tianyun's body. These weren't things that could be easily checked. If they wanted to check, it was basically no different from searching his soul. Moreover, they didn't need to go too deep to check his cultivation. They just needed to do a slight check. If there were any treasures that locked his aura, it would be very easy to find out. Now that they couldn't find anything, the result was naturally the same, 7th-level god monarch. A cultivation that shocked them was placed in front of them just like that. Is there anything else to check? Yi Tianyun gestured for the other elders to come up and check, but no one came to check. 2 elders had checked, and both said he was a 7th-level god monarch, so the other elders didn't need to check anything. They all looked at each other, not knowing what to say. At this time, great elder stood up with difficulty, and said with some difficulty, "Here, I solemnly apologize to fourth elder, I shouldn't have suspected you. But in order to be fair, we have to check." Great elder finally apologized slowly, but his sincerity was a little fake. He didn't forget to give himself a set of excuses so that he wouldn't be so embarrassed. But great elder's tone suddenly changed and he said, "The competition still has to continue. According to this, we can't simply judge by divine lord level. We have to fight at least heavenly venerables. As long as you fight all heavenly venerables, which is lower level heavenly venerables, we will officially recognize your proof." Once this was said, there was an immediate uproar. Divine Lord fighting heavenly venerables? Did they hear wrongly? Fighting heavenly venerables was fine, but all lower-level heavenly venerables, including late-stage lower-level heavenly venerables, had to be dealt with to be considered successful. This way, the difficulty was really high. How despicable! Heavenly Venerable Sword C and the others felt very annoyed, but they only felt very displeased. The corners of their mouths curled into a faint smile. If this was the standard, then they weren't afraid at all. Their junior brother could even fight middle-level Heavenly Venerables head-on. What was a mere lower-level Heavenly Venerables afraid of? Chapter 1453. That's not how the rules are set, is it? The great Devis's eyes turned cold. It was one thing to test one's cultivation level, but now they were playing this game. Wasn't it a bit too much to surpass levels and defeat Heavenly Venerables? He'd heard of Etianyun's strength and knew that he was capable. But sometimes, it wasn't a matter of ability, but of principle. As mentioned before, this was a competition between cultivators of the same level, but now it was a competition between cultivators of different levels. No. You set the rules. You only said that he could defeat all of our geniuses. Now that you're giving us a standard, we're already lowering our standards. The great elder's expression was calm, not at all ashamed of his words. That's what I said, but is it really going to be like that? The great Devis was furious. According to this, if they brought a Lord of Heaven, the opponent would have to face a heavenly god? How could they fight like that? It's not like that. Your disciple is so strong. Aren't you going to let him try? The great elder smiled faintly. His performance has exceeded our expectations. He might be able to defeat lower Heavenly Venerables. If he can defeat lower Heavenly Venerables by 3 levels, we'll consider it your win. It wasn't just the great elder. The other elders all nodded in agreement. The great Devis looked at his father. The Xiutian region lord didn't waver at all. He was still sitting there, motionless. You've gone too far. The region empress stood up and said coldly, how can you make such a conclusion? If word of this gets out, the Xiutian god realm will lose face. The region empress loved her son dearly. They finally got to see him, and now they wanted to force him away? The crowd fell silent. They all looked up at the Xiutian region lord. Could this be the region lord's idea? Sit down. The region lord glanced at them and said in a tone that brooked no disobedience. The region empress looked at him, wanting to say something but hesitating. In the end, she chose to sit down. The region lord looked over and said, he is indeed more powerful. This isn't against the rules. True geniuses have to fight higher levels. It's not a problem to fight higher levels. We also have geniuses of this level here, such as the ninefold celestial sovereign, who can fight against Empyrean gods. Only in this way can he be considered a true genius. He doesn't mean to go against what the fourth elder said. What else could the great Devis say when the heavenly cultivation domain lord had spoken? Alright. The great Devis's face was gloomy. It seemed like his father still didn't support him and still chose to stand on the opposite side. Then he looked at Etianyun and was about to say something, but Etianyun beat him to it and said with a smile, Master, leave this to me. I will let them know exactly where they went wrong. Etianyun took a step forward and glanced at them coldly. Come, who was the first one to come up? Let me go first. At this moment, a lower-level heavenly paragon jumped out. His entire body was emitting a domineering aura. Muscles bulged out of his body, making him look extremely disgusting. However, this was more of a symbol of power. He possessed super strength, and even if he wasn't as strong as the mighty god's bloodline, he wasn't too far off. It's Heavenly Paragon Karma. He's very strong. That kid uses his fists. Heavenly Paragon Karma uses his fists too. He will definitely be able to defeat that kid. This is going to be interesting. That kid's arm will definitely be crippled. How arrogant of him. I don't like him. I don't know where he came from. Maybe he cheated to win against our senior brother. They were all excited to see Heavenly Paragon Karma come up. They felt that they would definitely win this time. They didn't know what shamelessness was. They only knew that they had to win. Otherwise, the cards would really be reshuffled. Etianyun looked at Heavenly Paragon Karma and turned to look at him. This person was definitely an outstanding early-stage lower-level Heavenly Paragon. Looking at him, he was the strongest early-stage lower-level Heavenly Paragon. Looks like they sent their strongest as soon as they came up. They don't want to drag things out anymore. Tianyun smiled. He wasn't as concerned about face as before. He wanted to suppress Heavenly Paragon Karma immediately. After Heavenly Paragon Karma came up, he looked at him coldly. I heard that you're very strong? All this time, I've never had a match in terms of strength. However, your cultivation is so much lower than mine. I'll let you punch me first. Let's see if you can move me. However, with your strength just now, it's really no different from an itch. His two huge fists slapped each other, emitting a dong-dong sound. Then he patted his chest, indicating for Tianyun to attack him. Such a generous gesture was actually a provocation to Tianyun. Is that so? Then I won't be polite. Tianyun grinned. He wouldn't be polite to such an idiot. With a stomp of his foot, he dashed toward Karma Heavenly Lord and raised his fist to punch Karma Heavenly Lord. This punch didn't look impressive at all. It felt a little light, as if it didn't have any strength. Isn't the strength of this punch a little too weak? There's no strength at all. I don't think he can even make Heavenly Paragon Karma retreat, let alone injure him. Hee, that's probably it. Where's that arrogance from just now? He's cowering now. He's going to admit defeat later. Maybe he used up all his strength before. How could he still have any strength left? Let's watch Heavenly Paragon Karma beat him up and let them know the real gap between us. These were the words that they often said. They wanted to let their opponents know the gap between geniuses and mediocre people. Under their halo, the gap would only get bigger and bigger. They would never be able to catch up. Block it. The first elder and the others narrowed their eyes and shouted for Heavenly Paragon Karma to block it. However, there was no need for them to remind him. Heavenly Paragon Karma's eyes narrowed. Originally, he had said that he would give way. Now, he put his hand in front of his chest. His thick muscles were like an iron wall. At the same time, a faint yellow light enveloped his palm, making it look like a sturdy wall. Through the gap in his palm, Heavenly Paragon Karma saw Tianyun's mocking smile. Dong! A loud explosion erupted from Empyrean Attainment Force's palm. His entire palm was sent flying away along with his massive body. Even the void was shattered by this punch, causing cracks to spread out in all directions. Heavenly Lord Karma immediately turned into a meteor and flew into the sky. However, in the next moment, the Grand Elder had already flown over, grabbed Heavenly Exalt Karma, and held him firmly in midair. Chapter 1454. Tianyun's punch had almost pierced through Heavenly Venerate Karma. However, he had been merciful. Otherwise, Heavenly Venerate Karma would have been blown to smithereens. His current strength was no joke. The fusion of the Dragon God bloodline and the Phoenix bloodline had become an even more powerful bloodline. Just this bloodline alone was enough to unleash an astonishing amount of power. Apart from that, he also had other shocking bloodlines and the equipment he was wearing. When all of them were stacked together, he could suppress a lower Heavenly Venerate even without the crazy damage mode. In terms of strength, these guys were still too young. Especially this idiot, who had allowed him to attack freely. If he had resisted with all his might, he might not have been killed in one punch. However, if he had not been prepared at all and allowed Tianyun to attack, he would have been an idiot. Tianyun had seen this kind of idiot before. They all thought that they were very powerful and looked down on their opponents. In the end, he had killed them in one move. This kind of person made Tianyun feel relaxed. He did not need to waste any time. Next, Tianyun gently raised his hand, indicating that they could arrange for the next one. The crowd was silent. Heavenly Venerate Karma, who they had high hopes for, had been killed in one move. Even if he tried to defend, he could not do so in time. He was easily killed by a single punch. Especially when he said, "Next," it instantly caused them to feel as if they'd awoken from a dream and awakened from their shock. Despicable. You actually sneak attacked. Heavenly Venerate Karma was not prepared, and you already attacked. That's right, it was a sneak attack. Heavenly Venerate Karma was not prepared, and you already attacked. You are too despicable. Heavenly Venerate Karma was talking to you just now, and you actually sneak attacked. You are too shameless. All of them started cursing. They felt that Yi Tianyun had sneak attacked. Heavenly Venerate Karma was not prepared, and Yi Tianyun attacked. Even if it was a sneak attack, it was a sneak attack. Sneak attack? Yi Tianyun sneered. Just based on what you said, you still dare to call me a genius? You are simply pigs. Don't insult the word genius. You're not worthy. You're still talking about a sneak attack? He said he would let me punch once, so I directly punched him. You're still talking about a sneak attack? If you're not convinced, then come at me, you bunch of trash. Yi Tianyun looked at them coldly. Even a clay figurine would have a bit of anger. This group of people were just like those great elders, reneging on a bet after losing. The standards were raised again and again. It was truly disgusting. Everyone's expression changed. One by one they shouted, "Who are you calling trash? Let's go. Who's afraid of who? You go. Me? Why don't you go? Didn't you say it was a sneak attack? Go up and fight him." They said they wanted to fight, but who really dared to go up? They sure knew how to talk, but when it came down to it, all of them cowered, not daring to step up. Their cultivations were at the level of a divine lord or the Lord of Heaven. They would only be cannon fodder if they went up. Hadn't the previous divine lords been abused enough? Heavenly Venerable Sword C and the others laughed. They were even more disdainful of the geniuses of the heaven-cultivating God realm. These fools, their mouths are all impressive, but they don't have the ability. Sneak attacks? If they really had the ability, why would they be afraid of this little sneak attack? Little junior brother is amazing. He can defeat an Empyrean with one punch. If we were at the Divine Lord level, even if we could deal with him, it wouldn't be so easy. I can only say that Heavenly Venerable Karma is a little stupid. He thinks that little junior brother is an ordinary Divine Lord. Speaking of which, why is little junior brother so amazing? They are all Divine Lords, so why is the gap so big? Is it because Earth Monarch Jiulien is a little more powerful? Earth Monarch Jiulien, that's possible, but that's not right. Is he that amazing? Heavenly Venerable Sword C and the others were all discussing. They felt that Yi Tianyun had really helped them vent their anger by beating up this group of fools. Enough. The competition is valid. Great Elder growled, indicating for them to shut up and let the next Empyrean go up. Soon, a middle-stage low-level Empyrean came out. He carried a huge sword on his back. It looked very exaggerated. It was over a dozen meters long. Generally, it was extremely rare to use such a huge sword, mainly because it was not too convenient. And this huge sword was an Empyrean spirit treasure. The power that erupted out was absolutely shocking. Buzz. When this huge sword was pulled out, it vibrated slightly and gave off a buzzing sound. The vibrations caused the space to shake a little. There are some things that should be said and some things that shouldn't be said. Don't you know that? Heavenly Venerable Giant Sword held this huge sword tightly as if he was holding a wooden stick. His indifferent words turned into a wave of aura that swept over to Yi Tianyun. Instantly, Yi Tianyun's surroundings were shrouded by sword chi, and he became within the attack range. As long as the sword went down, it would definitely hit. This was his ability. Shouldn't this sentence be said by me? Yi Tianyun looked at him indifferently and said, "Oh, then I'll cut off your tongue. I wonder if you can still say it?" Heavenly Venerable Giant Sword walked towards Yi Tianyun step by step, his eyes filled with killing intent. "Cut off my tongue?" Yi Tianyun sneered. "Then let's see if you can cut it off. Break!" Heavenly Venerable Giant Sword suddenly slashed down with his sword. The surrounding sword chi suddenly surged up, turning into countless wind blades that swept towards Yi Tianyun. Every wind blade was extremely sharp and the speed was as fast as lightning, turning into faint white shadows that sliced over. Every wind blade just happened to be aimed at Yi Tianyun's mouth. When he said he would cut off his tongue, he meant it. At the same time, the huge sword in the air ruthlessly slashed down, still aiming at Yi Tianyun's area, wanting to lock him down from all directions. His attack was extremely ruthless. Even if this move didn't kill Yi Tianyun, he would definitely be cut into several pieces. In any case, as long as his soul wasn't destroyed, he definitely wouldn't die. However, he would be seriously injured, and it would take a long time for him to recover. Heavenly Venerable Giant Sword wasn't as careless as Heavenly Venerable Karma. His attack was extremely powerful, all for the sake of killing with one move. He didn't want to waste any time. Yi Tianyun's figure fluttered as he rapidly entered the void. The surrounding wind blades didn't affect him at all. As long as they didn't cut through space, they couldn't cause any harm to him. Power of the void? Everyone's eyes widened. This extremely rare ability actually appeared in the hands of a human? Heavenly Venerable Giant Sword's eyes narrowed as he rapidly locked onto the void that Yi Tianyun had just entered. His sword slashed down heavily as he roared, "Even if you hide in the void, it won't work. Get out here." "Where are you slashing?" A ghostly voice came from behind him. Heavenly Venerable Giant Sword's heart turned cold. He wanted to quickly counterattack with his sword, but it was already too late. A heavy kick came down, sending him crashing into the ground like a meteor. His back caved in. Chapter 1455. Heavenly Venerate Giant Sword nearly fainted after being kicked by Yi Tianyun. His back had caved in and his organs felt like they were about to shift. Just as he was about to get up and continue his fight with Yi Tianyun, all of a sudden, a heavy force came crashing down on him again, kicking him so hard that his entire body was smashed to the ground. His entire face was stuck to the ground. Bang! The dull thud made him dizzy. He felt like he had really almost fainted, but he didn't. The main reason was that Yi Tianyun had shown mercy. He would not let Heavenly Lord Karma off so easily. Crack! Then, Heavenly Venerate Giant Sword felt a sharp pain in his arm. By the time he looked to the side, he discovered that Yi Tianyun's foot had already stepped on his shoulder, crushing his arm. He didn't stop there. He continued to stomp several times, breaking Empyrean Giant Sword's 4 limbs. The intense pain made Heavenly Venerate Giant Sword pale. However, he did not cry out in pain. This bit of pain was nothing. "You still have some backbone. I thought you were all delicate and didn't have any backbone at all." Although it looked like a simple snap, there was actually a surge of energy entering his body and wreaking havoc. The pain was far more painful than breaking a bone. Then Yi Tianyun sent him flying with a kick, rolling out of the arena. At the same time he said, "You want to cut off my tongue? Then I'll cut off all your limbs." Since Empyrean Giant Sword was so ruthless, then there was no need for him to be courteous. He crippled Empyrean Giant Sword's 4 limbs. Of course, these injuries weren't difficult to recover from. He just wanted to teach Empyrean Giant Sword a lesson. Empyrean Giant Sword was easily kicked back, leaving everyone dumbfounded. Even Empyrean Giant Sword was instantly killed? If Heavenly Venerate Karma was considered to be stupid, then Heavenly Venerate Giant Sword was using his full strength to kill Yi Tianyun. Now, he was instantly killed. Before anyone could understand what was going on, Heavenly Venerate Giant Sword had already been killed. Nothing had stopped. It could be said that the battle was over in a split second. The end of the battle was not important. The important thing was that they had lost. Lost? Only then did they realize something. They couldn't accept this fact. A divine lord had easily killed a mid-stage Heavenly Venerate powerhouse without the slightest ability to retaliate? Those with slightly higher cultivation were also deeply shocked. The power of the void. Hiding within the void, I can easily dodge the Giant Sword Empyrean's attack. Then, for some reason, he appeared behind the Giant Sword Empyrean. Entering the void is indeed more concealed, but isn't his speed a little too fast? You're telling me you're a divine lord? If you say it's a late-stage lesser Empyrean, or a middle-rank Empyrean, your father will believe it. Is he really a human? Is he really that talented? I wonder how the great Devis managed to dig it out. They were all stunned. Whether they were middle heavenly venerates or upper heavenly venerates, even the sky celestials, they were all deeply shocked. They didn't know what to say in such a crazy situation. Was there really no way to stop his attack? If this continued, Yi Tianyun would be able to win 3 rounds in a row and win this round. More importantly, it was so easy. Who could stop him? Is this really a divine lord cultivation level? The faces of the first elder and the others twitched. They had the urge to check Yi Tianyun's cultivation level again. But they had checked before. 7th level divine lord. The truth was right in front of them. There was no way to hide it. Even a good concealment treasure would not be able to keep its effects after contact, especially since they were all sky celestials. If he could even hide from a sky celestial, then Yi Tianyun had to be a sky celestial first. But they would never believe that Yi Tianyun was a sky celestial, because he was constantly releasing a divine lord aura. How could he be a sky celestial? Moreover, as a sky celestial, why would he play such tricks? Wasn't this too insulting to the status of a sky celestial? Last one. Yi Tianyun gestured for the last one to come up. As long as he defeated the last one, then everything would be over. At this moment, the first elder and the others had solemn expressions. They really had to be careful. If this continued, they would lose for sure. They couldn't possibly continue to compete with the middle-level heavenly venerables, right? If that was really the case, they wouldn't even want their face anymore. Although they were shameless enough now, if they changed, that would be too much. Alright, last round. The first elder came to the lower-level heavenly venerable's side. He went up to one of the late-stage heavenly venerables and whispered something to him. The other party nodded and didn't say anything. Then, the lower-level heavenly venerables came up to the arena. They still looked very young. They were indeed the elites of the elites. They had all been specially nurtured and hadn't cultivated for too long. Therefore they were all so young. This proved that their talent was indeed not bad. The power of the void, astonishing speed, explosive power. I really couldn't tell that this was the cultivation of a divine lord. Heavenly Venerate Yihua looked at him with a burning gaze and said, "But it's about time. Everything will end here." "Do you all like to boast so much?" Yi Tianyun smiled faintly and said, "Each of you is better at boasting than the other. You don't have any ability at all. All you can do is boast. Whether I'm boasting or not, you'll know in a while." The corners of Heavenly Venerate Yihua's mouth curled up into a cold smile. This time, he didn't take the initiative to attack. Instead, he stretched out his hand and said, "Come, I'll let you take the initiative to attack. Let's see whether your speed is faster or mine." Yi Tianyun looked at him from head to toe and said with a smile, "Oh, you seem to be quite capable? Little junior brother, don't take the initiative to attack. This guy uses flames. Moreover, it's a relatively strong hellfire. Not only can it burn through the void, but it can also protect itself." Heavenly Venerate Sword Judge immediately saw through it and pointed out the problem. "Thank you, senior brother, for the reminder." Yi Tianyun turned to look at Heavenly Venerate Yihua and said with a smile, "It seems that you really have some skill. Why don't you dare to come?" Heavenly Venerate Yihua provoked. "If you don't dare to come, then you're a coward. Where's that domineering aura from before? Was it all fake?" Heavenly Venerate Yihua used the lowest form of provocation to make Yi Tianyun angry and attack him so that Yi Tianyun would take the initiative to attack. Chapter 1456. Heavenly Venerate Yihua was taken aback by Yi Tianyun's words. Wasn't this implying that he was asking for a beating? He was immediately enraged and he sneered. "I'm asking for a beating, right? Come on then. Hit my face if you have the ability. Let's see if you have the ability." He pointed at his face, indicating for Yi Tianyun to hit him. Then he patted his face lightly and said with a despicable smile, "Come on, come and hit me. Idiot fool, hit me this way." A heavenly venerate being so despicable made the people around him dumbfounded. Previously, Heavenly Venerate Giant Sword had said that he wanted to cut off Yi Tianyun's tongue, but the people around him didn't say anything. After all, it wasn't a big deal to say such things when he was enraged. Anyway, as long as he didn't kill Yi Tianyun, it wasn't against the rules. The elders turned a blind eye to the matter and did not say anything. Now, a heavenly venerate actually said such things. It was really despicable. Pa! Suddenly, a figure rushed over and slapped Heavenly Venerate Yihua hard, sending him flying. He rolled on the ground a few times and almost rolled out of the arena. His face was slapped high, and several of his teeth were knocked out. I've never seen such a despicable person. You actually want others to hit your face. I'll do as you wish. Lee Onion waved his hand and said indifferently, I have to say that your skin is really thick. It's many times stronger than that dragon scale defense. Fast, it was really too fast. Most people didn't know what had happened, but Tianyun had already sent Heavenly Venerate Yi Ho flying. Only those with higher cultivation and above Heavenly Venerates could see the speed at which Tianyun rushed over. They were all shocked by this speed. It was really too fast, so fast that they couldn't believe it, because this speed was already equivalent to their speed. The speed of a God Lord was actually almost as fast as them. Even if it wasn't as fast, the difference wouldn't be too great. Under such circumstances, what was the point of fighting? Not to mention the power of an upper Empyrean, with the speed of an upper Empyrean, how could a lower Empyrean play? There were quite a few realms that he had to cross. Just its speed alone was enough to kill everything in an instant. After all, only speed was unbeatable in all the martial arts in the world. How did you get here? Celestial Venerable Yi Hua was shocked. He had already prepared himself, so how did he get sucked out in an instant? He couldn't react at all. You don't need to know how I got here. Didn't you want me to slap you just now? Now that I've done what you wanted, I've slapped you hard in the face. Tianyun said indifferently. If it's not enough, how about I give you another slap? He controlled his strength very well and almost sent Celestial Venerable Yi Hua flying. It was just the right amount of strength. If he wanted to, that slap would have given him victory. As long as he sent Heavenly Venerate Hellfire flying, he would win. However, he didn't do that. It wasn't easy to deal with such a person. He had to play with him. Celestial Venerable Yi Hua was enraged. He quickly bounced up and glared at him. Again. Try slapping me again if you can. Since you want to be cheap, no problem. Tianyun rushed over, and an afterimage appeared in midair. The moment he rushed over, Celestial Venerable Yi Hua clapped his hands. Terrifying hellfire swept out in all directions, forming an extreme wall of fire that rose high into the sky. Everything that came into contact with it immediately turned into nothingness. He locked himself in almost all directions to protect his position. At the same time, he clapped his hands, and countless fire dragons whizzed in all directions, smashing down on the area where Tianyun was pouncing over. Countless fire dragons smashed down continuously. The floor of the hall shook, but it wasn't damaged. The restrictions here had been reinforced. It was very difficult for Celestial Venerable Yi Hua to destroy them. Unless a sky god attacked fiercely, it would take a long time to destroy them. Celestial Venerable Yi Hua's eyes were red. Even if Tianyun died, it had nothing to do with him and he wouldn't be punished. After all, based on the current situation, it could only be considered an explosive mistake. He could not use his full strength, right? Once he used his full strength, the result would be hard to say. The Great Elder had already said that fists and feet had no eyes. There would be times when one would miss. What he was playing now was miss. Who do you want to die? A ghostly voice came from behind Celestial Venerable Yi Hua, which made his heart go cold. The next moment he quickly turned around and waved his hand, sweeping the flames over. But how could his speed compare to Tianyun's? A heavy slap landed on his face once again, sending him flying out. He didn't roll out of the arena after this slap. Instead, he rolled a few times on the ground before quickly bouncing up with his hands on his face. His face was swollen. Previously it was on the left side, but now it was on the right. Both sides were swollen, making him look like a big fatty. But no one could laugh at this scene. They only felt that it was extremely strange. Celestial Venerable Yi Hua had clearly built a wall of fire, and if he wanted to enter, he would have to pass through it. As for entering the void, it was useless. This level of Yi Hua could even burn the void, which meant that hiding inside was useless. But now, Tianyun didn't leave any traces. He easily arrived beside Celestial Venerable Yi Hua and gave him a vicious slap. This slap didn't have much lethality. It was just a simple slap to the face. but this already proved many things. If Tianyun wanted to defeat him, he could do it in an instant. But he hadn't done so. Instead, he was playing around with Celestial Venerable Yi Hua and slapping his face. I've already slapped you once. Do you want another slap? Tianyun walked over step by step, his palms swaying slightly. He was ready to slap him again at any time. Celestial Venerable Yi Hua was like a kitten whose tail had been stepped on. He quickly bounced up from the ground and stared at Tianyun as if he had seen a ghost. You? How did you get behind me? Did you pass through the void? With your speed, do you think I need to pass through the void? Tianyun mocked. The other Grand Elders and the others fell silent. They had all seen what had happened in that instant. Tianyun's speed was too fast. He had appeared behind Celestial Venerable Yi Hua at an astonishing speed. To put it bluntly, Tianyun had already appeared behind Celestial Venerable Yi Hua the moment he used his flames. What was the use of just using flames? Chapter 1457. Heavenly Venerate Yi Hua was destined to lose, and he would lose completely. He wouldn't even have a chance to resist. Heavenly Venerate Yi Hua wanted to surrender. If this continued, he would only continue to be humiliated. He might as well surrender. He already knew how big the gap between him and Tianyun was. It was like a chasm. He couldn't even see Tianyun's figure. How could he fight? He was very confident in his attacks. However, no matter how confident he was, it was meaningless if he couldn't hit Tianyun. I surrender. Slap. Tianyun rushed over and slapped him, sending Heavenly Venerate Yi Hua flying. He rolled a few times and lost a few teeth. Didn't you want me to slap you? Try slapping me again. Tianyun interrupted him with a slap. He knew that Heavenly Venerate Yi Hua wanted to surrender, but he wasn't willing. How could he stop if he didn't slap him a few more times? These fellows had such a cheap mouth. He wouldn't know where he was wrong if he didn't slap him a few more times. Surrender, surrender. I'll give you another slap. Slap. Tianyun slapped him again. Heavenly Venerate Yi Hua rolled a few times and lay flat on the ground. Does it feel good? I'll continue to slap you. Let's see how thick your skin is. Tianyun wanted to rush over and slap him again. Enough. At this time, a wave of air came from the side and pushed him to the side. He only stopped after taking a few steps back. Tianyun looked up and saw that the one who had attacked was naturally the Grand Elder. He finally couldn't help but shout for a stop. If this went on, it would be really embarrassing for everyone to see Heavenly Venerate Yi Hua's face swollen. It was already embarrassing enough now. It would be even more embarrassing when the time came. It was basically a one-sided suppression now. There was no way for him to turn the tables. The elders were all discerning people and could see the gap. Especially from the speed, they knew that Heavenly Venerate Yi Hua would definitely lose. They thought that Tianyun's speed was already his limit. Who knew that he could increase it again? The result of this situation was that Heavenly Venerate Yi Hua was easily abused. Now they didn't even need Heavenly Venerate Yi Hua to surrender. Was Heavenly Venerate Yi Hua. But the truth was in front of them. They could only admit that the great Devis's disciple was stronger. Surrender? Tianyun smiled faintly. This means that we won. But yes, you won. No matter how tough the Great Elder's neck was, he could only nod and admit defeat. Yi Hui Yi Venerate didn't want to lose. To venerate Yi Tian venerate Yi God venerate Heavenly Venerable Sword C and the rest were incomparably excited. They finally won and weren't defeated by these shameless people. Tian heaves them to well. A heavenly to Yi Hua venerate. Well, as the Yi Lord. Yi Tian venade to say anything. Well. Venerable as well as venerate as heavenly fin. A Tian venerate. At the same time, they were terrified. Thinking about it, Tianyun was already so heaven-defying as a divine lord. What if he broke through to Heavenly Venerate? Wouldn't he be able to sweep away Heavenly Venerate level powerhouses? How did this guy cultivate? How can a divine lord have such power? That's right. Did he cheat? But how did he cheat? So many people were watching. If he cheated, they would have seen through it long ago. Anyway, I can't see that he cheated. That speed can't be considered cheating. His speed is too shocking. As long as he's fast enough, he can win. That's right. He's not that strong. He's even weaker than Heavenly Venerate Yihua. But his speed is too fast. I can't see it clearly. That's too shameless. If we were comparing strength, we definitely wouldn't have lost. This guy has a huge advantage. He won by relying on speed. Tianyun won, but there were still people who didn't recognize his strength. They thought that he won by relying on speed. If he didn't rely on speed and only relied on normal strength, he definitely wouldn't have been able to win. You bunch of idiots. You're telling us that you're geniuses. Winner takes all. No matter what method you use, as long as you can win, you're the winner. Saying that our little junior brother only relies on speed? If you have the ability, come and compete with a speed powerhouse? What a joke. If you had a speed powerhouse come and win against our little junior brother, you would definitely be fine. Heavenly Venerate Sword Lord immediately started scolding. Among the many senior brothers, his mouth was the fiercest. But thinking about it, he specialized in collecting information. This meant that he definitely had different thoughts. However, such a loud scolding in the main hall had really made them sick to their stomachs. Everyone's face turned ugly. Some of them immediately started retorting. It's obvious that he's just a little faster. If he's sealed in this area, can speed still be effective? We're not convinced. That's right. We're not convinced. If you have the ability, fight fair and square. Don't play tricks. If we send a defense-type powerhouse, no matter how fast you are, you won't be able to win without strength. Each and every one of them hooted even more fiercely, feeling like they turned into bickering mode all of a sudden, starting scolding each other. The numerous elders exchanged a glance. But head elder among them did not shout for them to stop, letting them shout freely. This meant that this head elder similarly felt that it was not too fair. Just as Heavenly Venerate Sword Lord and the rest were about to continue scolding back, Eonyun stepped forward at this time and said indifferently, "Since that's the case, then I'll give a 1-for-1 free. You guys send another person up and use your way to compete." His eyes were filled with rage, feeling that this group of guys was really enough. They still wanted a yard after taking an inch. Clearly relying on the fact that there were more people over there, feeling unconvinced? If you're not convinced, then I'll beat them until they're convinced. Cough, cough, fourth elder, this is what your disciple said? I didn't force him. Since that's the case, in order to make everyone convinced, continue to send a powerhouse up. How about it? Head elder smiled slightly and said, the final outcome will be decided by this. Thick-skinned probably could not even describe these guys anymore. When Tianyun saw these guys, he was simply disgusted to the point of exploding. Let him join this heaven cultivation god realm, but he was too lazy to even join. No wonder the great Devis chose to leave in the end. Meeting this group of guys, how could he want to stay here? If my disciple is willing, then there's no problem. The great Devis did not say anything and chose to agree with Tianyun's words. Since Tianyun felt that there was no problem, then there was no problem. Tianyun, give them a good beating, don't be courteous with master. At this time, the great Devis transmitted his voice to Tianyun. Chapter 1458. Relax, even if master didn't say, I wouldn't let them off easily. I'll mercilessly shut their mouths and make them have nothing to say. Tianyun's gaze was icy cold. Want to scam him? See if he had that ability or not. Going back on their words time and time again, it was really disgusting enough. He knew that this group of people was protecting their own position and did not want their interests to suffer. Once they admitted defeat, it was basically equivalent to the great Devis winning. At that time, according to the promise, the great Devis would be able to grasp most of the killing power. How to allocate at that time, that would be the great Devis's business. How could this group of people tolerate this kind of thing? Especially all along, they had always looked down on those people with mediocre talent. The moment they thought that a lot of resources would be allocated to that side, they felt extremely disgusted. Hence, they could only choose to go back on their words and roar shamelessly, so that they could continue to have another chance to be able to suppress Tianyun. Immediately, Head Elder immediately picked another late-stage Empyrean powerhouse. He did not dare to pick a middle-level Empyrean. That way it would be too shameless. Originally, a divine lord dealing with an Empyrean would make people feel like a joke. If it became dealing with a middle-level Empyrean, it would really be shameless. Oh, I was wondering what kind of trump card it was. Turns out that it's an Empyrean who specializes in the wind attribute and also has all kinds of speed enhancements. In terms of power, it's somewhat inferior to Empyrean Hellfire. But in terms of speed, it can be taken a look. Tianyun sized up Empyrean Sharpwind, who walked up and down, and immediately knew what kind of ability the main character they sent up was. They saw that flame power could not be suppressed, so they brought out Empyreans with similar abilities to compete in speed. See whose speed was faster and could suppress the other party with faster power. Your speed is very good, indeed very astonishing. It's just a pity that you ran into me. I'll let you know what's called true speed. The moment Empyrean Sharpwind came up, he did not make too many fancy moves. He immediately released the Empyrean spirit treasure on his body, white wings, and quickly equipped it on his back. This kind of Empyrean spirit treasure with speed was not unseen. Tianyun saw it before. Generally speaking, it was the right choice to make full use of one's advantages. With a shio sound, Empyrean Sharpwind turned into a white light that swept towards Tianyun. It was as if he was a wind blade, and this wind blade was him. The gigantic wind blade was like a crescent moon in the night sky, slashing towards Tianyun. Seeing such a frightening speed, a group of people began to cry out in surprise. In their opinion, this speed was definitely a notch higher than Tianyun's. The Great Elder clenched his fists tightly. He hoped to win this time. Heavenly Venerable Sharpwind wasn't as strong as Heavenly Venerable Yihua, but if he gave it his all, his speed would definitely surpass Tianyun. Now that Empyrean Sharpwind had just stepped onto the stage, he immediately chose to activate all of his strength, converting all of it into speed as he attacked Tianyun. What was required wasn't that one's strength had reached the pinnacle, but that one's speed had to be at the pinnacle. It had to be so fast that even a middle-level Heavenly Venerable wouldn't be able to keep up. This was the ability he was proud of. Unfortunately, the first representative wasn't him, because he only had speed. The Great Elder and the others thought that they needed extremely violent power to prove their strength. Who knew that he would be beaten up by Tianyun? Now it was his turn to show off his speed. He strove to use his strongest speed to instantly kill Tianyun in front of him. While everyone was cheering, little did they know that this place had already fallen into a vicious circle. Even if they won, it wouldn't be glorious at all. After all, they were facing a divine lord, not an Empyrean. Erupting with such valiant power, even if they defeated Tianyun in the end, it wouldn't be something to be proud of. Tianyun narrowed his eyes as he looked at Empyrean Sharpwind, who was pouncing over. He had to admit that Empyrean Sharpwind's speed when he erupted with all of his strength was really quite astonishing. Just this speed alone could already crush many middle-level Empyreans. However, it was just speed. In terms of power, it was a little weak. When dealing with some true powerhouses, even if he hit the opponent, it would be difficult to be fatal, and it was impossible to be seriously injured. It's just that I won't compete in speed. If I want to compete, I'll compete in power. Tianyun's eyes narrowed, and his fist instantly condensed the power of the planet in his body. The 5 elements core instantly surged with surging energy, surging towards his fist, and cyclones intertwined. The dragon and phoenix bloodlines directly exploded and completely integrated into his fist. The evil Lord of Heaven set was also fully activated, and its power was raised to the peak. Among them, it also erupted with the strongest power of the fusion martial arts, heaven-killing divine art, void-piercing. Explode! Tianyun's fist didn't smash anywhere, but chose to smash the void in front of him. Under this fierce blow, the violent power seemed to smash into a transparent wall. Suddenly, the void immediately collapsed, turning into a chaotic space that shattered in all directions. Heavenly Venerate Sharpwind, who had pounced forward, collided with this violent power. Under the rebound of the power, he directly raised his head and spat out blood. A large part of his body was crushed, turned into a pile of powder, and was quickly annihilated. Immediately after, a small half of his body fell from the sky to the side, smashing heavily on the ground. His flesh was a bloody mess, and it was quite terrifying. Everyone's eyes widened. What they saw was not Yi Tianyun's body, but Heavenly Venerate Sharp Wind's body. Now, Heavenly Venerate Sharp Wind's body had been smashed into pieces, and it looked quite cruel. No matter what speed, under this punch from Yi Tianyun, it was directly smashed. An extremely shocking range locked down everything in the surroundings. The speed of his punch was not fast, but the power that erupted from it locked down the entire range, and there was no way to avoid it. A true genius will not find excuses for his own failure. A loss is a loss, not a refusal to admit it. It's not that I don't have the power, but your abilities are not worthy of me using my full strength. Yi Tianyun said coldly, if you can't defeat your opponent, don't find excuses to comfort yourself. It will only show your incompetence. Yi Tianyun took 2 steps forward extremely domineeringly, simply using the power of his fist to prove that he was not powerless. What speed? What unbreakable speed! In front of him, it was all empty. Under one punch, everything was destroyed. Good. Heavenly Venerate Sword Judge started applauding, agreeing with Yi Tianyun's words very much. Heavenly Venerate Force and the others all laughed, agreeing with Yi Tianyun's words. A loss is a loss. Don't find excuses for your loss. Now, Yi Tianyun's punch once again proved that he did not rely on speed to win, but that his opponent did not even have the qualifications to make him erupt. Chapter 1459. Great Elder, I don't know what else you have to say this time. The great Devis looked at the great elder indifferently and looked at the genius disciples on the side. Now Yi Tianyun broke out with amazing strength, not relying on speed, but relying on his own fists. It completely proves that Yi Tianyun not only has speed, but also amazing strength. In the case where speed can easily win, it means that the opponent is too weak. Yi Tianyun now proves this point. He didn't use any speed, he just punched Feng Rui Heavenly Master. The violent power covered all directions, there is no place can escape his attack, and he easily killed Feng Rui Heavenly Master. No! The great elder said bitterly, this time he knows that he really lost. What else can they say? If they continue to say, it means that the middle-level Heavenly Master will come on stage. But the more it is like this, the more they lose face. Because Yi Tianyun's cultivation is only Divine Monarch, a Divine Monarch to fight against an Heavenly Master is already very exaggerated, let alone a middle-level Heavenly Master. The other geniuses also remained silent, only the shock in their eyes, but more of it is unwillingness. In the end, the great Devis won. It means that most of the power is in the hands of the great Devis. Well, this time the competition is won by the 4th elder. At this time, the Xiaotian domain lord announced that the great Devis won this competition and fulfilled his original promise. Finally won. Yi Tianyun breathed a sigh of relief, although he doesn't mind continuing to fight. If he continues to fight like this, he will naturally expose more of his strength. If he can, he will definitely stop now. Successfully completed the hidden quest, helped the great Devis defeat the genius, gained 3,000 compressed crazy point, 3,000 compressed proficiency, and obtained the special title, First Cut Edge. First Cut Edge. Increase your damage by 10 times in the divine domain. Another special title. Yi Tianyun's eyes lit up. This effect is very good, and can also be stacked. This meant that if he stayed in the god realm of the 3 realms, on top of his original foundation, his damage would be increased by 10 times. It was truly heaven-defying. While he was feeling pleasantly surprised, Xiaotian Region Lord's voice came from above, the vow of 10,000 years has come to an end. According to the original rules, the next Region Master would be the 4th Elder. Now, his authority had been elevated to the rank of Great Elder. The elders of the original rank will be demoted by 1 rank. Yi Tianyun was taken aback. No wonder the 1st Elder and the 2nd Elder were so against it, and were willing to go back on their words. So it was this kind of reward. It was really tempting. The great Devis suddenly rose from the position of fourth elder to the position of great elder. This would allow him to immediately become the person with the most authority under the region master, and he would also be the next region master. With all these conditions added together, how could the great elder not go crazy? But now, the great elder couldn't go against it no matter what. Not only had Xiutian Domain Lord spoken, but the great Devis had proved with his own strength that his theory was correct. He had brought a group of powerhouses who couldn't be considered geniuses over and ruthlessly crushed them. Little did they know that Yi Tianyun was considered to have become a monk halfway through his training. It couldn't be said that the great Devis had personally taught him. But the great Devis didn't care about these things. As long as he could win, then everything would be worth it. Thank you, Region Master. The great Devis half knelt and accepted these conferments, allowing him to successfully ascend to the top. The Region Empress was extremely excited. She was naturally very happy that her son could succeed. This matter soon came to an end. Even though those geniuses were unwilling, this was an oath that couldn't be violated. Yi Tianyun and the others were arranged to wait in the VIP room and couldn't wander around. They were the great Devis's disciples, but they couldn't wander around the Xiutian God realm. Thus, they could only stay here and wait for news. Little junior brother, come, let me toast you. Celestial Venerable Yu Qian raised his wine cup very heroically and downed it in one gulp. If not for little junior brother, we would have lost for sure. Master definitely wouldn't have had the chance to be the Grand Elder and would have been demoted even lower. That's right. Little junior brother, let me toast you too. Celestial Venerable Sword C and the others all toasted Yi Tianyun. Yi Tianyun smiled and drank with them. He was similarly quite happy. He finally ruthlessly abused those guys. But fortunately, he wanted to abuse the other two god realms more. When they were almost done drinking, Celestial Venerable Sword C suddenly asked, Little junior brother, if Master lets you join the Xiutian God realm, will you be willing to join? I'm not willing. Yi Tianyun shook his head and said, although I can intimidate them this time and make them choose to obey, it can't be changed in a short time. I don't want to stay in this damn place. I can only hope that Master can manage it well and change the atmosphere here. That's right. We also think the same and refuse to join here no matter what. Look at their faces, it's simply disgusting. No wonder Master would run out and want to change the Xiutian God realm. If this continues, the Xiutian God realm will be finished sooner or later. Celestial Venerable Sword C was extremely displeased. Geniuses are in the minority. Always ignoring those with average talent won't last long. Right now, the resentment is extremely deep. As it accumulates more and more, there will eventually be a time when it explodes. Celestial Venerable Li and the others shook their heads. They were really unwilling to stay in this kind of place. Their goal was surprisingly the same. They were unwilling to join the Xiutian God realm. I think Master definitely won't let us join. Even if he becomes the Grand Elder now, he won't let us join. Yi Tianyun drank a mouthful of wine and smiled. How do you know this? Celestial Venerable Sword C said in puzzlement. Master definitely can't leave this place. It's equivalent to returning. Could it be that he's going to let us stay outside? I'm not sure about that. It should be like this for now. Yi Tianyun said with a smile. When they were chatting enthusiastically, the great Devis walked in from outside and said with a smile, You guys are all drinking here. What are you talking about? Why are you so happy? All of them shut up, too embarrassed to say what they were discussing. Nothing much. We were talking about whether or not Master will let us join the Xiutian God realm. Yi Tianyun asked simply and rudely. The mouthful of wine in Celestial Venerable Sword C's mouth directly sprayed onto Celestial Venerable Dragon Cry's face. He did not expect that Yi Tianyun would be so bold to say it out. These words were too straightforward. It almost made them spit it out. That won't happen. You guys are the first batch of disciples of the vast divine sect. How can you possibly join the Xiutian God realm? The vast divine sect is the vast divine sect. It won't become the Xiutian God realm. The great Devis said solemnly, Moreover, This place hasn't settled down yet. It's far from time to really let you guys join. This place still needs a long time to reorganize. Chapter 1460. This battle was finally over. After the great Devis took office, he didn't immediately make any major changes to the situation. However, the situation would definitely change. The talent test would no longer be defined by that lousy stone tablet. At the same time, the treatment of the disciples with average talent would be greatly enhanced, so that they would have the opportunity to climb up. They would have the opportunity to obtain everything that geniuses could obtain. After these announcements were made, the entire cultivation god realm was in an uproar. Many disciples who were already in despair suddenly felt hope and felt that they had the hope of turning things around. At the same time, when they learned the details of the inside story, they were deeply shocked. All of this was fought for by Vast Empyrean God. Vast Empyrean God was the fourth elder back then. He made a promise that he would make the heavenly cultivation god domain fair. Even disciples with average talent couldn't be given up. This action immediately made the great Devis's prestige explode. The support for him was unprecedentedly high. It could be said that even the cultivation god realm lord didn't have as high a prestige as the great Devis. There were so many disciples in the cultivation god realm. At least 70% to 80% of them had average or lower level talent. Did such an extreme situation have nothing to do with the cultivation god realm lord? Therefore, the great Devis's prestige reached the peak. Many people even discussed that the great Devis could quickly take office as the domain lord and let him change everything. However, the great Devis wasn't a real god. Although he was a heaven god, he wasn't the omnipotent type. Many things still needed to be done step by step. There was no way to reach the sky in a single step. If he made drastic changes immediately, the geniuses here would definitely cause a backlash. What he needed to do was to balance both sides. These things were enough to keep him busy for a while. As for Tianyun and the others, they chose to leave the cultivation god realm and return to the vast god sect. The vast god sect still had many things to be busy with, so they were handed over to them to manage. Since the great Devis had returned to the cultivation god realm, the vast god sect naturally had to be handed over to them to manage. However, this had nothing to do with Tianyun. He wasn't good at managing these things, so he naturally had nothing to do. It's about time. It's time to go back. Tianyun planned on returning to the divine realm of the three realms. There was no point in staying here any longer. He had already done what he needed to do. All that was left was to properly attack his cultivation and break through to the Empyrean realm. He had already met the requirements to break through to the Empyrean realm, so all he needed to do was accumulate experience and everything would be fine. Just as he was about to leave, rays of golden light suddenly burst forth from the area in front of him, spreading in all directions and illuminating a large area of the god realm. The golden light looked extremely dazzling. Even the myriad realms' divine realm was affected by it. Looking up at the sky, it was all golden and dazzling. It was rather exaggerated. He didn't know what kind of power could reach such a level. What is this? Tianyun was startled. He raised his eyes and looked up, but the appraisal eye could not detect anything. This proved that there was nothing inside. It was just a very simple diffusion of energy. Naturally, there was no way to detect anything. At this time, Empyrean Sword Ruler and the others came over. When they saw the scene in front of them, they immediately sighed. It's probably some heavenly god ruins that appeared. That's why there is such an effect. This is the ruins of an ancient heavenly god. The treasures inside must be very tempting. Ancient heavenly god? Tianyun was stunned. Yeah, they are heavenly gods from a long time ago. Usually they are called ancient heavenly gods. The resources of these ancient heavenly gods are extremely shocking, including the ancient heavenly venerables. However, those that can survive are basically unseen. If they survive for that long, their strength is very heaven-defying. If it's an ancient upper heavenly venerable, they can probably fight head-on with the current heavenly gods. It's quite terrifying. Empyrean Sword Ruler and the others had heard of it, but they didn't know what the actual situation was. There's such a saying? This was the first time Tianyun heard of such an existence. Yes, they are considered a very early batch of experts. Their bloodlines are very ancient, so they are naturally incomparably powerful. After so long, our bloodlines have become extremely thin. How can we compare to them? Empyrean sword ruler shook his head. Some rare bloodlines would gradually disappear with the passage of time. And some that still remained were already extremely thin. As they continued to reproduce, with different races or with the same race, their bloodlines would become thinner and thinner. In the end, it was because their strength was not heaven-defying enough, and their bloodlines were not stable enough. As a result, their strength became weaker and weaker. It was the same kind of bloodline, but the difference in power was like heaven and earth. Tianyun had a deep understanding of this. The grade of his bloodline was equivalent to the ancient bloodline. For example, the ancient dragon god bloodline was equivalent to the 7th or 8th grade. The current dragon god bloodline was only equivalent to the 2nd or 3rd grade. The effect was naturally like heaven and earth. Ancient heavenly god ruins. Tianyun's eyes lit up. What he needed now was a lot of resources. If he could obtain the resources of a heavenly god, it could accelerate the overall strength of the three realms god realm. Especially with such a rich heavenly god ruins, it was definitely a world of difference from the current heavenly gods. However, if he killed a current heavenly god, he would also obtain extremely rich resources. It was just that with his current strength, he could not do that. Little junior brother, are you interested? Heavenly Venerable Sword C and the others could see that Tianyun was ready to make a move. I'm a little interested and I want to go take a look. Tianyun did not hide it. He indeed wanted to go and investigate. Then what are you waiting for? Let's go together. Heavenly Venerable Sword C laughed loudly and signaled Heavenly Venerable Li and the others to go together. This. Tianyun looked at them. Let alone Heavenly Venerable Sword C, even Heavenly Venerable Li and the others were already eager to test his strength. Don't worry, we don't need to manage this place. As for whether or not someone will invade, I believe that no one will dare to mess around. Master will let the experts of the Heaven Cultivation God realm attack, and any faction will be flattened. Heavenly Venerable Sword C patted his shoulder and said excitedly, moreover, this is the ruins of an ancient heavenly god. Of course, it could also be the ruins of an ancient heavenly venerable. We can only see it once in a very long time. Isn't it said to be an ancient heavenly god? Tianyun was startled. How would I dare to say that? I'm just casually guessing. It's very likely to be an ancient heavenly venerable. Heavenly Venerable Sword C spread his hands. Alright, then let's go now, lest it get snatched away. Tianyun nodded. It was naturally a good thing to move together with them. Chapter 1461. The 5 disciples of the vast divine sect moved out as soon as they said they would. After making some arrangements, they could set off. This was an extremely rare opportunity. They couldn't miss it. Unless their cultivation was too low, they would set off. This was an ancient ruin. There were so many treasures and they could train. How could they miss it? The best way to close the gap between those with ordinary talent and those with amazing talent was to constantly train. Only in this way could they close the gap. If they obtained treasures, they would soar to the sky. So sometimes, talent was just one part. Opportunities could improve themselves. I hope it's an ancient heavenly god ruin. Tianyun hoped that he would encounter a heavenly god ruin and not an Empyrean ruin. After all, Heavenly God Ruin was a higher level and had more resources. So, Tianyun hoped to encounter a Heavenly God Ruin. The 5 of them quickly went to the area that emitted light. They passed through one god domain after another and finally arrived at the god domain that emitted golden light. This god domain was actually one of the god domains that had been destroyed in the Battle of God Domains. It was normal for it to appear here. It should be said that it would only appear in such a damaged god domain. Normal god domains wouldn't have such a situation. How could there be light that attracted others? I didn't expect it to be here. Itianyun looked around. Many cultivators flew over. Whether they were itinerant cultivators or powerhouses from certain factions, they would all send people over. Every time something like this happened, there would be a bunch of people coming out. Because they knew that every time a ruin appeared, there would definitely be good things. Moreover, they would be of a very good level. It seems like this place has been destroyed, but there are still many intact ruins. Some are hidden in some rocks, and some are protected by spatial turbulence. Now that they burst out, it must be because the seal is broken. Empyrean Sword Ruler knew the most about this. Although Empyrean Force and the others had high cultivation, they didn't know as much as Empyrean Sword Ruler. It was mainly because Empyrean Sword Ruler liked to inquire about all kinds of information, unlike Empyrean Force and the others who only cultivated. I just don't know if this ruin is a heavenly god ruin or an Empyrean ruin. No matter what it is, the competition is not small. The Heaven Cultivation God Domain will probably send people over, Empyrean Sword Ruler guessed. Itianyun nodded. With so many factions coming, the Heaven Cultivation God Domain definitely wouldn't miss this opportunity. Among the 4th grade God Domains, the Heaven Cultivation God Domain was considered very strong, but no matter how strong it was, it still needed resources. Especially since they had more geniuses and needed more resources. They definitely couldn't miss out on these ancient ruins, especially after they came out. The danger would be greatly reduced. According to the original situation, even if he knew that there were many treasures here and that there might be some ruins sealed somewhere, he would not be able to find them. However, no one dared to casually come looking for him, not even Empyrean gods. The higher one cultivation, the more one feared death. If one died there would be heaven, their cultivation. Soon after, they quickly flew forward. After flying for some distance, they finally saw the true appearance of the ruins. It was no different from an ordinary hall. The divine halls of powerhouses were more or less similar. They would either have a few more statues or a few more lines of words. That was the general scale of the divine halls. Some were special, but the one in front of them wasn't special. It was a high-rank Empyrean spirit treasure. A towering palace stood there, golden light spreading in all directions, looking very dazzling. Without a doubt, the owner of this spirit treasure was metal type. Otherwise, it wouldn't emit such a dazzling golden light. At the same time, it was confirmed that this ruin was an ancient Empyrean ruin and not a heavenly god ruin. It's a pity that it's an Empyrean ruin. Empyrean Sword Ruler sighed, then smiled, but it doesn't matter. The danger will be reduced a lot. If it's an ancient heavenly god ruin, we have to be more cautious. Otherwise, we'll die without a whole corpse. Itianyun agreed with this. The higher the level of the ruin, the more dangerous it was. Especially an ancient heavenly god ruin. There might be many heavenly gods coming to snatch it. The difficulty could be imagined. Senior Brother Sword Ruler really knows how to comfort himself, Itianyun said with a smile. Saying it was a heavenly god ruin was more dangerous, but they also wanted it to be a heavenly god ruin. If they wanted better treasures, they had to be of a higher level. Cough cough, sometimes comfort yourself and know how to be content. Empyrean Sword Ruler said with a smile. Moreover, are the things of an ancient Empyrean not good? There must be many good things. There might even be treasures that can help us break through to heavenly god. That's right, but the difficulty might be a little high. Itianyun looked around and saw a bunch of celestial venerables piled up in a row on the side. Some came alone, and some came in groups. Among them, there was no lack of godlords who came to try their luck, especially some godlords who couldn't break through to Empyrean level. Even if they died, they would come to try their luck. Of course, every time an ancient ruin like this appears, there will be a big fight. There are many casualties. Empyrean Sword Ruler narrowed his eyes and looked around. His gaze finally gathered on the palace in front. Now, we can't enter the palace for the time being. The seal outside hasn't dispersed yet. It shouldn't be a problem to break it by force. But they are staring at each other. I reckon no one is willing to do that. They are all waiting for the seal to break by itself. Many experts were waiting in the surroundings. They didn't rush in immediately because this ancient ruin had a seal. If they wanted to break it, they would need to spend a lot of effort. But they didn't want to do it alone. After all, if they did it and others didn't, wouldn't they be at a disadvantage? The instant the seal was broken, others might take the opportunity to sneak in. At that time, they would really be making a wedding dress for others, and it would be a loss. Moreover, the seal had already become very weak. If they continued for a few more days, this seal would break by itself. At that time, it would be equivalent to the door opening, allowing them to rush in. Looks like we also have to wait outside. Yi Tianyun and the other 4 were waiting by the side. They similarly didn't want to be the first bird to stand out. They didn't want to work for nothing. Unless the seal could only be broken in a few decades, the cultivators here wouldn't make a move. While they were waiting, there was a steady stream of cultivators rushing over. Yi Tianyun saw that no heavenly gods appeared. Clearly, heavenly gods didn't fancy this kind of resource. Chapter 1462. As time passed, more and more cultivators came over. Their gazes all stared closely at this ancient ruins, waiting for the ancient ruins to open. With the passing of time, this seal became fainter and fainter, feeling like it was going to shatter at any time. Once it shattered, everyone would rush up right away. Almost there, just a bit more and the seal will be broken. Then just a bit more. I must get a lot of treasures inside. Too naive. Don't you see so many cultivators here? Wanting to obtain treasures isn't easy. Who cares? Who knows, maybe by casually walking around inside, there'll be treasures dropping in front of me. That's really possible. There was an Empyrean like this before. When others were constantly snatching treasures, he was just strolling around in other places. Suddenly, a treasure dropped down and was picked up by him. Furthermore, it was pretty good. Yeah, so luck is very important. Ruins this thing is rather unstable. In the past, when its owner was alive, there weren't any problems. Once it collapses, it's easy for all kinds of problems to occur. Everyone was discussing this matter, all hoping that their luck would be a bit better. This way, they did not need to compete with others and could obtain treasures. But this was all just beautiful imagination. Whether they could obtain such wonderful luck, that would really depend on their own luck. Yi Tianyun smiled slightly. Comparing luck, who could compare to him? It was undeniable that some cultivators' luck was rather heaven-defying, but under his luck halo, who could compare? His luck was not bad to begin with. Adding on 100 times luck, wouldn't treasures drop down while walking? Thinking about the situation in the outer divine regions, one would know how important luck was. Directly making the token appear above was like forcefully pulling it over. Yeah, luck is very important. Due to a long time, these ruins became very unstable. Sometimes, a moment of carelessness, you'll enter a special treasure space and casually plunder those treasures. Empyrean Sword C explained with a smile. At the same time, there's also a possibility of entering a dangerous space with a moment of carelessness, causing yourself to die without an intact corpse. Hence, it's still better to be careful. Yi Tianyun nodded his head. He was still aware of this point. These ruins would appear because they themselves became unstable, leading to this kind of situation. During the initial battle, the shockwaves from the battle would cause damage to these seals. Over time, if it wasn't repaired, it would split open and reappear in the world. Correspondingly, the restrictions inside were all damaged. Once it was damaged, there would be a mistake. This was just like the teleportation formation. Even if it was slightly damaged, it could still be used. However, whether or not it could be sent to the correct destination was another matter. Those who were unlucky would be sent directly into the danger zone, unable to return. Soon. At that moment, everyone saw the barrier rapidly disappearing. It felt as though it would break at any moment. The group of people's nerves were taut. They all wanted to rush in as fast as possible and plunder the treasures inside. It would be easier for the first batch to find treasures, but correspondingly, it would be more dangerous. The further they went, the more danger they would encounter. However, this was the only way to obtain the treasures first. It was much safer to come later, but it really depended on luck. Otherwise, not to mention treasures, even a strand of hair would be taken away. All of a sudden, hundreds and thousands of cultivators stopped discussing anything else. They held their breaths and stared at the ruins. Crack! At that moment, cracks began to appear on the barrier above. Following that, they became bigger and bigger. In the end, the entire barrier was covered in cracks and looked like it would collapse at any moment. At that moment, everyone's hearts were in their throats. However, the barrier didn't break. If it didn't break, then they could only continue waiting. It looked very fragile, but it was the most dangerous moment. Once it was broken, a large amount of energy might surge out from inside and attack them ruthlessly. This situation wasn't rare. The main reason was that the aura in the ruins was chaotic. When it dissipated, it was equivalent to the attack of an expert. If they were hit, even if they didn't die, at least they wouldn't be able to explore anymore. It's almost time. At that moment, Lee Tianyun, who had his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes. A bright light shot out from his eyes, and the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. It's indeed almost time. This seal is about to break. At most, it can last for a few more days. At that time, it will definitely break. Heavenly Lord Sword Ruler thought that this was what Lee Tianyun meant. That's not what I meant. Senior brothers and senior sisters, grab me. Lee Tianyun gestured for them to grab his arms or shoulders. Grab you? They felt a little puzzled, but they still reached out to grab Lee Tianyun, not knowing what he meant. Following that, their figures flashed, and the 5 of them disappeared into thin air. Everything happened so stealthily. Some cultivators at the side looked over in confusion. When they saw that it was empty, they thought that it was an illusion. Were there 5 people there just now? What 5 people there? Don't look over. Even if they die, it has nothing to do with us. Hurry up and look over here. Don't look elsewhere. Yes, no one cared about the disappearance of Lee Tianyun and the others. Anyway, it was a good thing for them that someone had left. At the same time, Lee Tianyun brought them to a corner of the ruins. This place was extremely remote, and the surroundings were incomparably dilapidated. There was a spatial turbulence in front of them, wreaking havoc at the side. This is inside the ruins? The 4 of them were stunned. They didn't know what was going on, and they were already inside the ruins. Wasn't there a barrier outside? Yes, this is the inside of the ruins. Lee Tianyun looked around. Finally, he could come in ahead of time. Previously, his spiritual sense couldn't penetrate inside, so it was naturally impossible for him to teleport in. When the barrier broke a little, his spiritual sense could finally come in. Then he quickly found a very safe area and teleported them in. Now, they were the first batch of cultivators to come in. Moreover, they had plenty of time to explore this place. Correspondingly, they were the first batch to encounter the dangerous area. However, this wasn't the main point for them. The main point was that they had come in ahead of time, which made them feel that it was unbelievable. How did we come in? Isn't there a barrier? Sword Lord Heavenly Venerable and the others were stunned. This is one of my abilities, similar to the power of the void. Lee Tianyun smiled and said, now that we have come in ahead of time, let's see where we can start exploring. Chapter 1463. Lee Tianyun had been waiting for this opportunity. Being able to enter a day or a few hours earlier was a great opportunity. It might be dangerous, but all the treasures here belong to them. No one could enter. The space here is very chaotic. It's indeed a little difficult to deal with, especially if one's power can't be released and is suppressed here. It's very easy to get hurt. Heavenly Venerate Yu Qian and the others looked around. There was a chaotic aura raging in the surroundings. Once the barrier exploded, it would spread out in all directions like a flood. It would be safer then. It was rather dangerous now. One could be seriously injured or even die here if they weren't careful. Lee Tianyun could tell a lot with just a glance. There were several spatial tears in front. If one was sucked in, they would be trapped in the shattered space even if they didn't die. It would take a lot of effort to get out. They might even die directly and get torn apart by the chaotic space. These were the after-effects of the battle. While the violent power was wreaking havoc, it affected the space and made it very dangerous. Fortunately, not all areas were very dangerous. There were still many places that were relatively safer. Let's split into two groups. This is the safest and fastest way. Heavenly Venerately suggested after looking around. Little junior brother and I will be in one group. The three of you will be in one group. Little junior brother's overall strength is very strong and he can use void power. He will be in a group with me. The three of you will be in one group. It will be easier to take care of each other. Alright. They didn't waste any time and nodded in agreement to this suggestion. Actually, they all felt that this was a good idea. Lee Tianyun could also use his void power here and escape at the critical moment. He was basically on the same level as Heavenly Venerately. As for the three of them, it would be safer. Heavenly Venerate Yu Qian could bring the two of them together. This was a very reasonable arrangement. If they moved together, it would be a waste of an opportunity. They wanted to take advantage of the fact that the others couldn't enter so that they could plunder more things in a short period of time. If they didn't split up, they wouldn't be able to plunder as many things. In that case, they might as well wait for the barrier to shatter and enter when it was safer. Immediately after, they split into two groups and flew in different directions at a moderate speed. They didn't dare to go too fast. If they encountered any danger, they would be dead for sure. Lee Tianyun and Li Tian Heavenly Venerate chose another path and entered the passage. There was still a lot of spatial turbulence around them, and there was also a dangerous aura around them. This is just an ancient Heavenly Venerate ruin. Why is it so dangerous? Lee Tianyun looked at the space turbulence in front of him. If it was the Heavenly God's ruin, wouldn't it be even more exaggerated? This is the difference between ancient Empyreans. Long ago, resources were abundant, not as scarce as they are now. The things they obtained were simply too good. Just looking at these ruins, they far surpass our upper-level Empyrean spirit treasures. They're not just a single level stronger. They're a bit like Empyrean and Empyrean God treasures, Empyrean Force explained. Tianyun nodded. He also saw this point. If it was not for the rich resources, there would not be so many cultivators so crazy about it. Let's go. Li Tian Heavenly Venerate snorted and immediately flew towards the spatial turbulence. Li Tian Heavenly Venerate activated his Strength God bloodline and punched at the spatial turbulence, turning the spatial turbulence into nothingness. In some cases, they couldn't break through the turbulence. They could only dodge to the side to avoid being sucked in. Heavenly Venerate Li was strong, but they had to be careful when facing these things. After dodging for a while, they finally arrived at the side of a spacious hall. As soon as they entered, they heard an ear-piercing voice. Invaders! A giant eagle and a giant bear stood on two tall platforms. As soon as they entered, the soil on their bodies trembled, and they pounced toward Tianyun. Each of them was a middle-level Heavenly Venerate statue. Their ferocious strength made them feel a sense of danger. Just the middle-level Heavenly Venerate statue alone gave them the feeling of an upper-level Heavenly Venerate. This was the effect of the ancient era. The materials used to make them were all top-notch. How could they be weak? It's a puppet statue, and its grade is not low either. Heavenly Venerately snorted. Finish it quickly. Don't hold back. I'll hold them off. You take the chance to sneak attack them. Mighty God bloodline, all out. Heavenly Venerately used his strongest move. His fists swelled up, turning into huge fists that smashed toward the statues without hesitation. He did not hold back at all. He would be an idiot to hide his strength at a time like this. He had to kill them as quickly as possible and earn the treasures. As for running away and not fighting, that was impossible. If they wanted to enter this hall, they had to defeat these statues. Otherwise, the door would not open. This hall was like that. There was only one door, and there were two statues guarding it. Heavenly Venerate Mighty Heavenly Venerate's fists rained down on the statues in a frenzy. Even the mighty statues were rapidly forced back by his punches. At this moment, a cold light flashed out from the void. A spear directly pierced through the head of the giant eagle, causing it to explode like it was a piece of tofu. Break! Yi Tianyun walked out of the void. He used the void to sneak attack from the side and easily killed one of the statues. Ding! Successfully killed puppet statue giant eagle. Obtained 100 compressed EXP, 100 compressed crazy point, 100 compressed sin point. At the same time, obtained eternal gold, ancient material, illusory sand, ancient material. There was no reward for killing a statue, and there was no reward for killing a statue, but he got some good ancient material. It was obvious that these were statues, which was why there wasn't much EXP or reward for killing someone of a higher level. However, the ancient material made his eyes light up. After the giant eagle statue was killed, it immediately turned into a pile of mud and fell to the ground. Now that he killed them, he got some ancient material, which was a pleasant surprise. Interesting. I need to collect more materials. I want to refine a heavenly venerate spirit treasure. Chapter 1464. After killing the eagle, Yi Tianyun quickly went to kill the bear. With one less, it would be much easier to deal with them. In particular, Heavenly Lord Li's violent power was suppressing his opponent, forcing him to retreat step by step, unable to fight back at all. However, the other party was a puppet, so it didn't know pain and continued to resist. However, under the ferocious attacks, cracks continuously appeared on its body, and it looked as if it would shatter at any moment. Break! Yi Tianyun flew over from the side and pierced its head with his spear, easily finishing it off. Successfully killed puppet statue giant bear. Reward: 100 compressed EXP, 100 compressed crazy point, 100 compressed SBS. Obtained Eternium. The rewards didn't change. It was still the same materials and the familiar experience points. It was pitifully little. Easily taken care of. Little junior brother, your attack is really domineering. Even such a hard head can be pierced by your spear. Truly amazing. Even Heavenly Paragon Li felt that he was inferior. His fists were very strong, but if he wanted to smash his opponent's head with a single punch, it was still far from enough. I focused all my strength on one point, especially its weak point, which is its head. That's why I was able to pierce through it easily. The main thing is that eldest senior brother was able to help me control it. Otherwise, it would not have been so easy to deal with it. Yi Tianyun wasn't fawning over the Heavenly Lord's strength at all. It was precisely because of the Heavenly Lord's strength, Heavenly Lord's ferocious beating, that he was able to take it so easily. Otherwise, he would have had to put in more effort. Sure enough, teamwork was much easier. Yi Tianyun's contribution was naturally not small. He had completely mobilized the core energies of the 5 elements in his body and gathered them all together, thus achieving the effect of easily piercing through. These statues were also included. They were a little old, and the great formations on them had deteriorated a little. Their might was far from what it used to be. As long as you're capable, Celestial Force laughed. Come, let's continue. Yi Tianyun and Mighty Sky Heavenly Master rushed forward. After killing the 2 statues, the door opened. After entering, they immediately saw rows of rooms on both sides. They randomly opened a door and entered, and they could see a lot of pills and weapons inside. This is also a treasure vault. It seems like we've struck it rich. Heavenly Venerate Force's eyes lit up, and he quickly said, "Let's split up and search. If something happens, retreat immediately. Don't be greedy." Yes. Yi Tianyun nodded his head and immediately went to search the other rooms. There were some pills, some weapons, and some materials. There weren't many of them, and they were scattered on the side. This place couldn't be considered a treasure trove. When the Divine Realm War began, most of the treasures were definitely on their bodies. Some of them weren't with them, thus some of them were left behind. But to them, it was a treasure trove. These were all ancient grade materials and pills, so how could they not be precious? Yi Tianyun didn't stand on ceremony and took everything. In terms of weapons, they weren't heaven-defying. They were still at the superior grade Heavenly Tao level. However, in terms of power, it far exceeded the current high-grade Heavenly Tao level. From the appraisal eye, there was even the word primordial, behind it. Of course, this did not mean that they were all ancient items. They were definitely extraordinary items, and there were still trash items. After a period of searching, everything here was emptied, and the rest was just some garbage. This place has been cleared out. Let's change to another place. After Heavenly Venerate Force and Tianyun gathered, they continued to explore other places. They basically searched non-stop. However, after searching a few places, the entire area was completely searched. This area is gone. Let's continue searching elsewhere. They quickly continued to search other places. There were also statues standing in other places. With their teamwork, they easily defeated them. The main reason was that their teamwork was getting better, so it was naturally easier. Following that, they continued to search, but the treasures they obtained were extremely few. It should be said that there were very few true treasures. Most of them were scattered items, and they didn't encounter a true treasure trove. This area has been cleared out. There's basically no more space left. Let's go back, Heavenly Venerate Force said. As the main roads outside had been sealed off by spatial turbulence, it was basically impossible to pass through. Therefore, there were many areas that couldn't be collected. The true treasures were clearly in the deeper areas. When they returned to their original starting point, Heavenly Venerate Yuqian and the others didn't return. They didn't foolishly wait here. Instead, they immediately went to the area that Heavenly Venerate Yuqian and the others had gone to. After all, there were so many unknown areas here. Who knew if they would encounter any danger? Immediately, they went to the area that Heavenly Venerate Yuqian and the others were in. Along the way, they saw many guards being killed. The battle was also quite tiring. Not long after, they heard the sounds of intense fighting coming from inside. Waves of energy were constantly flowing through the passageway in front of them. There's a situation. Tianyun and Heavenly Venerate Force exchanged a glance and quickly rushed forward. After passing through a passageway, they saw a human-sized statue that was roughly 1.7 meters tall. However, it was precisely this small statue that blocked the three of them outside. This statue was simply like a living person. Its attacks were very agile, and it constantly used amazing martial arts to force them back again and again. If Heavenly Venerate Yuqian hadn't resisted many attacks, Heavenly Venerate Sword C and the others would have been in danger. The situation now wasn't optimistic either. Heavenly Venerate Yuqian could barely fight this statue to a standstill. It would be a little difficult to defeat it. Tianyun scanned it with his appraisal eye, and detailed information immediately appeared in front of him. Sword Guard, Middle Stage Upper Heavenly Venerate. Has domineering sword skills that can easily kill intruders. Its body contains the owner's bloodline power, which greatly increases its power. After inspecting it, Tianyun knew why it was so difficult to deal with. It turned out that this statue contained the owner's bloodline power. This way, it could use all kinds of martial arts that greatly exceeded the level of the previous statues. Just this alone was enough to stop them here. Help! Heavenly Venerate Force Sky didn't hesitate and immediately attacked, suppressing the sword guard with Heavenly Venerate Yuqian. Junior sister, let me help you. Heavenly Venerate Force Sky shouted and quickly went to help. Heavenly Venerate Yuqian didn't say a word. Her figure flashed, and she stood beside Heavenly Venerate Force Sky, suppressing the sword guard together. The two of them seemed to have cooperated countless times, and they were very familiar with each other. In an instant, the sword guard's attacks were greatly weakened. Chapter 1465. Heavenly Venerate Yuqian and Heavenly Venerate's cooperation was perfect. It was obvious that they had worked together frequently in the past. Hence, it was much easier for them to deal with their enemies now. With every move, the sword edge guard was forced to retreat again and again. Heavenly Venerate Mighty Heavenly Venerate's violence and Heavenly Venerate Yuqian's gentleness. These were two completely different abilities, yet they were able to perfectly fuse together. They were able to take on all kinds of attacks. Senior brother Li Tian and senior sister Yu Qian's teamwork is amazing. They are suppressing this fellow to the point where he is unable to resist at all. If this goes on, the guard will definitely be defeated. Heavenly Lord Sword Ruler retreated, looking extremely wretched. He hurriedly consumed medicinal pills to recover from his injuries. Overall, they were still fine. It was mainly because Heavenly Venerable Yu Qian was the main combat force that he was able to sustain light injuries. The main reason was that the energy consumption was too crazy. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any problems. Heavenly Venerate Long Ming's situation was much better. His body was tougher to begin with, and his recovery ability wasn't bad, so his situation was naturally much better. Just when they thought that they could easily defeat the enemy, the long sword in the hands of the sword edge guard suddenly burst forth with a dazzling light. Immediately, a sword light that was more than 100 feet tall appeared and crazily danced. The crazily dancing sword gleams were able to form an extreme sword formation. At the same time, countless long swords appeared in the surroundings and attacked the area they were in. Even Yi Tianyun and the others were included in the attack range. This guy is going crazy. Hide quickly. When Heavenly Venerable Jian Si and the rest saw the long sword, they immediately knew that this fellow was going to risk his life and activate the Grand Array to fight against the enemy. The expressions of Heavenly Sovereign Yu Qian and the others changed. These sword formations were not simple, especially since they were gathering ancient-level weapons. Their might was rather shocking. Even though it was only at the high-grade Heavenly Dao level, it was not the least bit inferior to an Empyrean Spirit Treasure-level spirit sword. If a few hundred of them were to explode, it would really be fatal. Swish, swish, swish. One by one, flying swords pierced through the air, trying to destroy the intruders. They could only quickly block the flying swords that pierced through them. Dang, dang, dang. Eonyun quickly brandished the long spear in his hand, deflecting these flying swords away. Every time a flying sword attacked him, he could feel the web between his thumb and forefinger turning numb. The impact was too strong. He had to use a lot of power to resist it. He almost exploded with damage mode. This power was simply too powerful. Every strike had the might of a mid-stage or even late-stage upper Heavenly Venerate. How could they not be suppressed? This was just a puppet. If the real master came out, wouldn't he be able to easily suppress them? This was the truth. The ancient Heavenly Sovereign was no joke. He could easily crush them. Not only were Yi Tianyun and the others pushed back, but even Heavenly Sovereign Yu Qian and the others were pushed back, unable to advance any further. With so many flying swords piercing through him, how could he easily dodge them, especially when each one of them was so powerful? In the blink of an eye, the two Empyreans in the lead had several more wounds on their bodies that were so deep that bones could be seen. This flying sword was so sharp that even Heavenly Venerate Power and the others were easily torn apart. He's really too powerful. Yi Tianyun felt that even if he attacked with all his might, he wouldn't be able to deal with it easily. Even with the crazy damage mode, it was still difficult to catch up to this terrifying power. After all, it was just too powerful. He couldn't keep up with it even if he used it. Unless he improved his cultivation level, he might have a chance to kill it. But from the looks of it, even if he used all his experience points, he probably wouldn't be able to break through to the Heavenly Venerate level. At most, he would be able to break through to the 9th level God Lord level. Therefore, even if he used it now, he wouldn't be able to break through to the peak level. If he broke through to the peak level, coupled with the crazy damage mode, he might be able to fight with a mid-stage or late-stage upper Heavenly Venerate. The crazy damage mode wasn't invincible. The combat power of an upper Heavenly Venerate was extremely shocking. It wasn't something that could be easily surpassed. He might be able to easily deal with a mid-stage Heavenly Venerate, but he was still very powerless against an upper Heavenly Venerate. Retreat. Heavenly Sovereign Yu Qian and the others immediately retreated. However, they discovered that the passage behind them had been sealed. It hadn't been sealed when they came in, but they didn't expect to be sealed when they went out. This meant that they could only enter and not leave. They couldn't wait for more invaders to enter so that they wouldn't be able to leave. Invaders, you must die for trespassing on the Dragon Sovereign Shrine. The Sword Edge Guard started speaking in the human language, but his attacks didn't slow down at all. They were now in danger. If they wanted to rush over and kill the sword edge guard, they would have to pay a huge price. Damn it, these flying swords are too powerful. If we get close, I'm afraid we will be severely injured. They frowned. They already had a lot of injuries on their bodies. If this continued, their injuries would definitely become more serious. We can only fight with our lives on the line. They immediately decided to join forces and fight. If they didn't, they would all die here. Just as they were about to fight with their lives on the line, a green light suddenly shrouded them and healed their injuries rapidly. In the blink of an eye, most of their injuries were healed. The crazy healing power crushed everything. Senior brothers and senior sisters, let me help you. Tianyun quickly released the Voodoo with Divine Set, which doubled their healing power and helped them resist the increasing injuries. Okay. Their eyes lit up as they felt their injuries rapidly recovering. They could fight with their lives on the line now. Kill! The two of them looked at each other and quickly rushed toward the sword edge guard. Their crazy power completely exploded, and they were much stronger than before. This time, they were going all out to suppress the sword edge guard, so the effect was naturally much stronger. Suppress! The two of them roared and joined hands to display a martial art. It was a relatively rare joint martial art. After joining forces, their power increased greatly. Then, they fiercely suppressed the sword edge guard. At the same time, the sword edge guard also fought with their lives on the line. Many flying swords flew over, constantly injuring Heavenly Venerate Yu Qian and the others. However, they were not afraid at all. With Yi Tianyun's recovery power, they didn't need to worry too much about their injuries. They just had to fight with their lives on the line. Die! The two of them heavily attacked. The combined compressed energy sent the sword edge guard flying. It hit the wall and turned into a pile of powder. It was completely dead. Under the suppression of the two of them, they finally killed the sword edge guard. At the same time, the two of them were also badly injured. They either lost a large piece of their body or an arm. Chapter 1466. Ding. Successfully killed sword guard. Reward, 500 compressed EXP, 500 compressed crazy point, 500 compressed SBS. Obtained dragon bloodline, rare, eternal gold, mirage sand, dragon temple structure diagram, rare. After the sword guard was killed, Tianyun successfully obtained the reward. Although he didn't touch the sword guard, he healed Heavenly Venerate Yu Qian and the others, so he can get the corresponding reward. After seeing the reward, Tianyun's eyes suddenly lit up. These are all good things. Not only can he get amazing bloodline power, but he can also get the Dragon Temple Structure Diagram. Bloodline power and Dragon Temple Structure Diagram. Tianyun immediately checked the effect of the two things, and soon the detailed information of the two things appeared in front of him. Dragon Bloodline. After absorbing, you can obtain Dragon Bloodline power. Structure of the Dragon Revered Temple. A rough outline of the structure of the temple. After absorbing, can I strengthen Dragon and Phoenix Divine Veins? He didn't hesitate and immediately used the Dragon Bloodline. After absorbing, a voice sounded in his ears. Dragon and Phoenix Divine Veins upgraded to second level, effect increased. Strength increased to 200 times, speed increased to 200 times. Has the effect of rebirth, cooldown shortened to 5 years. At the same time, strengthen the Dragon and Phoenix Phantom, increase the suppression effect on the monster clan. After absorbing the Dragon Bloodline, it only upgraded by 1 level, but overall, it's still very good. If it's just a simple upgrade, it needs a lot of crazy point. It's a pleasant surprise that it can be used to upgrade. It can enhance a lot of power, not bad. Tianyun nodded, but he originally planned to upgrade this bloodline so that he can strengthen his power. Even if there is a little gap in cultivation, he can still make up for it with the power of the bloodline. Then, he turned his attention to the map of the Dragon Sovereign Shrine. It did show a rough structure, but it didn't show what was inside, nor did it show any arrays or dangerous areas. It's a very simple explanation of how many rooms there are, where there are passages and so on. It's quite simple. However, it was already quite good to have this kind of structure. At the very least, he could know what the overall structure was like, which would allow him to take fewer detours. So this is the structure. Lee Tianyun felt that this thing was still very important. Once it was officially opened, he would be able to go straight to the most important area. There were no markings on where the treasures were, but the truly precious treasures were definitely in the deeper regions. Through this map, he could easily bypass them and reach his destination. Little junior brother, your healing powers are simply too strong. If it weren't for you, I would have been seriously injured. Heavenly Premier Force and the others came over to praise Lee Tianyun. This is all I can do. Lee Tianyun smiled. Being able to help was already a good thing. He was just afraid of standing there like an idiot. That's more than enough. Otherwise, if we were to fight them head-on, we would probably lose our battle power before we could even hit them. Heavenly Paragon Force's expression was solemn. This was no joke. With so many flying swords flying towards him, there was no way he could dodge them easily. No matter what, he would be hit many times. When that happened, he might even lose his battle power. Therefore, Lee Tianyun's help was decisive for them. There's no need to say too much. Let's go and see if there are any treasures. The guards here are so strong. There should be many treasures inside, Lee Tianyun said with a smile. Yes, let's go and search for treasures. They immediately became spirited. With such strong guards, there must be some important treasures inside. Otherwise, why would they send such strong guards? They couldn't be too weak inside. Immediately after, they quickly rushed inside. After entering the passageway, what came into view was not a special room, but a pool. Faint golden spring water constantly gushed out from inside and filled the pool. Other than that, there were many golden spirit herbs beside the pool. They looked very dazzling and golden. This is golden bellflower, that is golden moongrass. They are all very rare spirit herbs. After seeing them, their eyes lit up. They were all relatively rare spirit herbs. However, what they paid more attention to was the pool in front of them. These spirit herbs all grew beside the pool. There was no doubt that they were relying on the liquid in the pool to help them grow. This should be the golden spirit pool. Legend has it that there is dense metal energy constantly gushing out. If we absorb it, we can greatly strengthen our physiques. If we have a metal attribute constitution, the effect will be even more shocking. It's a pity that our constitutions aren't metal attribute. However, it doesn't hinder us from absorbing it. It can strengthen our physiques. Heavenly Paragon Sword C was very knowledgeable. He immediately recognized what this thing was and was pleasantly surprised. Golden Spirit Pool. There is a golden pool eye underground. It can continuously absorb the surrounding energy and transform it into metal spirit liquid for absorption. After absorbing, it can greatly strengthen one's physique. However, as one's cultivation increases, the effect will decrease. If one has a metal attribute constitution, the effect will increase by 3 times. It's indeed a good thing. I just don't know how effective it is. Lee Tianyun's eyes lit up. It was definitely a good thing to strengthen one's physique. Especially if it was not limited to metal attribute constitutions. Needless to say, as long as it was alive, it could be absorbed. This meant that everyone present could go down and absorb it. Then why wait for us? Let's go down and absorb it together. If we wait for the door to open, we definitely won't be able to slowly absorb it. Or rather, we don't want to stay here to absorb it. Lee Tianyun smiled and jumped down. That's right. Let's quickly go down and absorb it. We definitely can't waste it. Absorb as much as we can. Heavenly Paragon Sword C and the others entered the water one after another. As soon as they entered the water, they used all their strength to absorb it. Their bodies immediately turned golden, looking like they were leaning towards metal attribute. In reality, it didn't change the attributes of their bodies. It only strengthened their physiques. After entering the water, Lee Tianyun also crazily absorbed it. However, his constitution was different. His constitution could accommodate any attribute. This meant that he could transform into any attribute at will. It could be said that he could transform into a metal attribute constitution, increasing the effect to the greatest. Buzz. Chapter 1467. The whirlpool around Tianyun was the largest. It was a size larger than the others, and the absorption speed was much faster. In the blink of an eye, a large portion of the golden energy around him was drained by him, and it gradually returned to the state of ordinary water. Originally, this golden pool came from the golden pool eye below. After absorbing the energy within, it would naturally return to the color of ordinary water. Tianyun's absorption speed was not only amazing, but the key was that the effect was even more amazing. It was 3 times as much as the others. As a result, his body began to strengthen rapidly. His body was covered with layers of thin golden leaves, and he really looked like a golden man. The effect is okay. Tianyun felt that the effect was okay, but it was definitely not of a very high level. It could only be considered average. His physique was too strong. After so many bloodline enhancements, the effect of this golden liquid was naturally quite reduced. Fortunately, there was a 3 times increase. Otherwise, the effect would really be negligible. As for the other heavenly venerables, the effect was also relatively limited, but it was better than nothing. For their cultivation base, it was extremely difficult to increase a little. Unless their physique was relatively weak, the effect was relatively average. To them, it was a very good effect to be able to increase a little. Anyway, this was not theirs. Even if it could only increase a little, it was already a good effect. Immediately after, Tianyun continued to absorb crazily. The surrounding whirlpools became stronger and stronger. Gradually, the golden liquid of this golden god pool began to be rapidly absorbed. If this continued, all the energy of this golden god pool would be absorbed completely. Not too much time passed. In the short span of a day, this amazing golden god pool was sucked dry just like that. There was not a bit of golden liquid left. What was left was a pool of ordinary water. Gone? Tianyun opened his eyes. The golden color on his body gradually faded, and he returned to his original color. The situation did not seem to be a big problem. The key was that the energy in his body had been slightly strengthened. The other heavenly venerables opened their eyes one after another, all with a look of longing. No matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat. They naturally felt that they would not think it was too little. Little junior brother, you're absorbing too quickly. You're much faster than us. I reckon that more than half of the golden divinity pool's energy was absorbed by you. Heavenly Venerable Sword C laughed. It's all right. Tianyun scratched his head in embarrassment. He did absorb the energy the fastest and fiercest. Hurry up and dig up the golden lake eye below. When the time comes, let junior brother take it back and choose a place in his own force, then set it up. When the time comes, it will also form a golden divine pool. As a place to nurture disciples, it's pretty good. It can definitely nurture even stronger geniuses. Celestial Venerable Sword C suggested from the side, signaling Tianyun to go down and dig it up. This thing was not a one-time thing. As long as one dug it out and buried it in a good place, it would be the same as this place after some time. This is a little embarrassing. Tianyun looked at the golden pool eye at the bottom of the pool. It indeed looked like a huge eye buried in the bottom of the pool. Those who did not know much about it did look rather horrifying. It was like a huge eye looking at them from the bottom of the pool. How could they not feel horrified? According to the level of the treasure, this was at least a celestial venerable level treasure. Its grade was naturally not too low. What's there to be embarrassed about? If little junior brother hadn't brought us in first, we definitely wouldn't be fated with this place. Moreover, he could obtain so many treasures. Needless to say, I've never experienced such an easy way to obtain treasures. The entire ruin seems to belong to me. Celestial Venerable Sword C laughed. In the past, when they encountered a ruin, they would first kill their way in among groups of cultivators and then continuously rush forward, racing against time. It was so that they could snatch the treasures first. However, most of the treasures were snatched by others first, and they did not even get to drink the soup. It was different now. They could swagger in and pick any treasure they wanted. They did not have to worry about being snatched at all. The only thing they were worried about was encountering various traps or encountering guardians. That's right. Don't be polite with us. When we want to absorb it, we'll look for you. Celestial Venerable Force smiled knowingly at the side. All right, I won't be pretentious. Then I'll take it back first. When the time comes, senior brothers and senior sisters, and the disciples under me can look for me again if they need it. Tianyun naturally would not be polite. This thing was quite good. It could speed up the cultivation of the disciples of the three realms. He would never think that he had too little of such things. Immediately, Tianyun swam to the bottom and began to dig out the golden pool eye. As it was covered with a large array, it was slightly more difficult to dig it out. Fortunately, with the help of other senior brothers, it was soon easily dug out. After digging it out, he threw it into his inventory and swam up. It's about time. There's no way out here. Return to the outermost area and wait for the seal to break before continuing in, Celestial Venerable Force said. They nodded and flew to the passage outside to wait. The location they chose was the safest and most stable area. When the seal broke, the entire ruin would change. They did not wait long. Very soon, the barrier outside finally shattered into countless pieces with a cracking sound. Boom! As soon as the barrier broke, a terrifying wave of energy rushed out from the hall. Like a thick beam of light, it blasted towards the void outside. Some powerhouses did not dodge in time and were immediately affected by this beam of light. They were completely turned into nothingness. They did not even have the chance to scream before they died. They were far away, but the direction of the attack just happened to be aimed at them. They could only blame their bad luck. The situation inside the ruin also fluctuated wildly, wreaking havoc in all directions. Whether it was the ground or the walls, they were constantly bombarded with deep marks. The entire ruin shook violently, as if it was about to collapse. This was the result of the energy being compressed for too long. After the seal was broken, it poured out in torrents. It looked very exaggerated. Inside the passageway, they formed a thick shield to protect themselves. This wave of impact also spread over. Fortunately, the strongest force was outside the passage at the entrance. The other passages were weaker, and with their ability to withstand it, there was no problem. This wave of impact lasted for several hours before it finally stopped. Go! Chapter 1468. Tianyun and the others quickly rushed towards the Dragon Sovereign Temple, and the rest of the cultivators who were rushing towards the Dragon Sovereign Temple were like a group of carps crossing the river. It's all mine. All the treasures are mine. Get lost. All the treasures are mine. A bunch of idiots. Your cultivation is so weak, yet you still want to snatch the treasures. Get lost. When they rushed in, they immediately started fighting each other madly for the sake of fighting for more treasures. Some of the stronger ones rushed in as fast as they could. After coming in, they looked at a random place and rushed in. So far, it was important not to cause any fights. There was no point in fighting without getting the treasures. But some people just bumped into each other and started fighting, not giving way to each other. Such idiots weren't rare, and there were quite a lot of them. Soon, everyone rushed into the other passages. After searching through the rooms, they were all dumbfounded. What's going on? There's nothing here? There's nothing here either. It's empty. What's going on? Why is there a pool here? Could it be some special pool? Damn it. It's just ordinary water. There's no effect at all, and it's a little disgusting to drink. After rushing in, they found that the room was empty. There wasn't even a single strand of hair left. As for the pool, there was no energy at all. It was just an ordinary pool. Everyone was disappointed. He thought he would find a lot of treasures, but in the end, it was all for naught. There was nothing. They felt that they had been tricked, thinking that there was nothing in the ruins. How could they even talk about treasure hunting? Most of the cultivators felt that they had been tricked after rushing in. Not to mention that they could get treasures, at least others could get treasures. Who knew that there was nothing here? At the same time, Yi Tianyun and the rest quickly went in. There were many intersecting entrances, like a maze. But this wasn't a problem for Yi Tianyun. He had the blueprint of the Dragon Sovereign Shrine, so he could go wherever he wanted. This way. Yi Tianyun signaled them to follow him as they ran deeper into the dragon-revered temple. The treasure was definitely in the deepest part of the temple, so it couldn't be in the outer regions. Heavenly Sovereign Li and the others didn't think too much about it. They all followed Yi Tianyun and rushed inside. As Yi Tianyun circled around, he finally arrived at the inner area. There were many passageways in this area, but they were all tightly locked. If one wanted to pass through, they would either have to destroy the door or break the restriction. The doors here are all locked. It's even more disgusting than meeting the guards. Heavenly Lord Sword C and the others frowned. If they encountered the guards, they could still fight, but if the gate was sealed, they would need to find a way to open it. There are quite a number of open passageways here. Why don't we look over there? Heavenly Venerate Dragon Cry suggested. It's hard to say from there. If we go in from here, we can reach the innermost part. When Yi Tianyun sensed everyone's astonished gazes, he took out the blueprint of the Dragon Sovereign Shrine. It was something that could be taken out and was similar to a map. This is what I found before. Although it didn't mark anything, at least we know how to get to the innermost part. The real treasures should be in the innermost part. You don't have any objections, right? After spreading it out, they were shocked. They didn't expect Yi Tianyun to have such a thing. Indeed, I didn't expect Junior Brother to be able to find such a thing. No wonder you led the way for us. Heavenly Sovereign Sword C smiled in surprise. He didn't expect to find such a thing. However, they didn't suspect anything. After all, it couldn't have been drawn by Yi Tianyun himself, could it? The passageway on the side is probably the key to opening the door. Correspondingly, there might be danger. From this, I can see that the area is more complicated and there might be many guards. Sure enough, it's dangerous. Treasures aren't that easy to obtain. Yi Tianyun looked at the blueprint. There were many passageways on both sides, and it wasn't just one. There were a total of 3 doors in front of him, and there was a groove on them. This meant that something had to be embedded in them to open the door. Without a doubt, the danger inside wouldn't be low. The closer they got, the more dangerous it would be. There were so many guards outside, so how could there not be any inside? Looks like we have to look for the key again. How troublesome. Can't these ruins open all the doors? Heavenly Sovereign Sword C felt helpless. This was simply a trap. Don't you lock up your treasures? Heavenly Sovereign Dragon Cry retorted from the side. Heavenly Sovereign Sword C immediately stopped talking. Even in his territory, some treasures would be locked up, so it wouldn't be easy to find them. Actually, the most important thing is whether or not the key will be taken away. Yi Tianyun felt that this was the key. These grooves were all embedded with things. If the key was taken away, how could he continue? She could only stand outside and stare blankly. This is really possible, but we can only look for it now. Even if we can't enter, it would be good to plunder some treasures. Heavenly Sovereign Force said solemnly, as usual, we will split into 2 groups and go to different areas to search. If there is a problem, quickly escape, don't force it. No problem. Heavenly Sovereign Yu Qian nodded and immediately led Heavenly Sovereign Sword C and the others to one of the passageways. Yi Tianyun and Heavenly Sovereign Force also went to the other passageway. But when they rushed into the passageway, Tianyun immediately felt himself pass through a wave of ripples, and then Heavenly Sovereign Force beside him disappeared. It's an isolated space. Yi Tianyun quickly turned and walked back, but he found that it was already too late. He was completely separated from Heavenly Sovereign Force, and he couldn't touch him. This kind of restriction was relatively common, and some weak points could be broken. At least, the one in front of him couldn't be broken. It was an extremely profound restriction that required at least a 6th or 7th grade divine inscriber to break, and it would take a long time. Yi Tianyun's grade wasn't at that level, so he naturally couldn't break it easily. It was useless to walk back now. It was equivalent to entering a trap, so how could he get out? Unless he broke this trap, There was no way to get out. I didn't expect to be tricked, and no one knew. Lee Tianyun frowned. He couldn't see any problems from the outside, but he could only sense it after entering. He had to say that this Dragon Sovereign Temple had some skills. It seems that we can only take one step at a time and see what the situation is here. Lee Tianyun didn't panic. Before entering, he had already prepared for any accidents. Chapter 1469. After Lee Tianyun came in, he directly walked forward. He could only go forward. If he went back, he would have to take a detour. He wanted to see through the situation here, but he couldn't easily do so. His grade was a bit too low. Unless he raised his Divine Carving Master grade to the 6th or 7th grade level. After circling around, Lee Tianyun immediately felt a sense of crisis in front of him, causing him to frown. He feared that if he continued forward, he would encounter danger. He wasn't worried about a battle, but he was in the opponent's advantageous position. This wasn't something that could be solved easily. After thinking about it for a moment, he decided to raise his Divine Carving Master level. Raise Divine Carving Master grade. Ding! Successfully deduct proficiency. Ding! Congratulations to player Lee Tianyun for successfully raising the Divine Carving Master grade to 4th grade. Ding! Successfully deduct proficiency. Ding! Congratulations to player Lee Tianyun for successfully raising the Divine Carving Master grade to 7th grade. Lee Tianyun's proficiency had been completely used up. There was basically nothing left. Even his sin value had been ruthlessly thrown in. After the previous system upgrade, whether it was proficiency or sin value, they could be converted to each other. Under the conversion, he could barely raise the Divine Carving Master grade to 7th grade. This required far too many proficiency points. It was simply exploding. Towards the end, he needed tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of proficiency points. It was simply a fraud. Even after accumulating so many proficiency points, it still wasn't enough to fill his teeth. He had to use up all of his sin value in order to raise it to 7th grade. I've finally advanced to 7th grade. Lee Tianyun let out a deep breath. When he looked up, he was immediately stunned. He discovered that his soul strength had jumped to the Empyrean level. Moreover, it was at the middle Empyrean level. This leap was truly amazing. It had to be known that his soul strength was at most at the Divine Lord level before. But in the blink of an eye, it had risen to the middle Empyrean level. Without a doubt, soul strength was linked to the Divine Carving Master grade. The higher the grade, the higher the soul strength. This meant that if he continued to level up, the strength of his soul would increase along with it. This kind of leveling up was really too easy. It was as if it was free. I never thought that advancing to a Divine Inscription Master would have such an effect. It's really beyond my expectations. Lee Tianyun shook his head. He felt that this was really unexpected, and it was far beyond his expectations. In the past, he didn't have such a strong feeling. But now that he had become a Divine Engraving Master, his feeling had risen. His cultivation hadn't even broken through to the Empyrean realm, yet his soul strength had already risen to the Empyrean realm. This was really a little funny. Then let me see the true face of this place. Lee Tianyun's eyes flickered as he activated his third eye. A talent like the heavenly eye would improve along with the strength of one's soul. Basically, it was an exceptional divine skill. He didn't even need to cultivate it to be able to display greater strength. After releasing it, the surrounding divine seal patterns immediately appeared in front of him. Every detail was clearly displayed, including the trap formation in front of them. This was because after advancing his soul strength, he could easily use the third eye to investigate. If it were in the past, he wouldn't have been able to easily see through it. Even if he were blind, he still wouldn't have been able to see through it. If it were so easy to see through it, then it wouldn't have been an ancient Empyrean ruin. As long as it was an intruder, it would be killed without hesitation. These ruins were originally different from those ruins that were used to select legacy disciples. This was originally the territory of others. If a disciple didn't belong here, they would naturally be killed. Thus, if one went to the ruins to search for treasures, they would face the danger of death. So that's how it is, its senior apprentice brother Li Tian. Yi Tianyun's eyes flashed. He saw that Empyrean Li Tian was being controlled by a large array formation. The surrounding array formations were wildly attacking him, leaving him no place to hide. It seemed that Empyrean Li Tian had been attacked for a long time. His body was already covered with cuts and bruises. It was unknown how many times he had been attacked. If this continued, Empyrean Li Tian would definitely be exhausted. This place was filled with attack arrays. All intruders would be separated, as if they had entered a different space. In such a situation, a fierce attack would not feel good no matter what. Damn it, I don't believe that I can't break it. Empyrean Li Tian roared. He swung his fists and punched the array formation in front of him. He punched out fiercely again and again, wanting to forcefully destroy this formation. Heavenly Venerate Mighty Sky didn't know any divine seals, nor did he know any grand arrays. He just relied on his brute strength to attack the grand array. If this continued, he would definitely be able to break the array formation. However, after he broke the array formation, there would be even more arrays waiting for him. This meant that if he continued, he would definitely be attacked repeatedly. It would be difficult for him to advance, and he might even die here. It had to be said that he had only just entered, and the dangers here were already exposed. This was much more dangerous than the outside world. Looks like I have to save him. Yi Tianyun's eyes flashed. Chapter 1470. Among the 5 of them, there was basically no one who had any achievements in the field of divine carving masters. The highest level was only at the 2nd or 3rd grade. 2nd or 3rd grade divine carving masters were useless here. Therefore, it was better to gather together and move. This was a bit of a waste of time, but moving steadily was the key. Heavenly Venerate Li agreed with Yi Tianyun. Who would have thought that things would be so complicated here? They could only look for them honestly. It was best to move together. Then, under Yi Tianyun's lead, they quickly chased after Heavenly Venerate Sword C and the others. As Yi Tianyun's ability had improved, it wasn't a problem for him to bring people out of here. After leaving here, they rushed to the other passage without stopping. The other passage was exactly the same as the one Yi Tianyun and the others had encountered before. It was also a strange array. Yi Tianyun had just come in and immediately saw Heavenly Venerate Sword C and the others being besieged. Heavenly Venerate Sword C was on the verge of death. Several parts of his body had been cut off, and one of his arms had been broken off. He was still constantly dodging, using his last bit of effort to avoid these attacks. It wasn't that Heavenly Venerate Sword C was too weak, but the array here was too abnormal. It was simply fatal. The main reason was that the territory was theirs. If there were too many arrays, the result would be the death of the invaders. Senior Brother Sword C is in trouble. Yi Tianyun quickly passed through the void. Before Heavenly Venerate Sword C could react, he was dragged into the void by Yi Tianyun. Then he used the Voodoo Wood Divine set to quickly heal him. Many thanks. After saying these words, Heavenly Venerate Sword C fainted in Heavenly Venerate Li's arms, which showed how serious the consumption was. As long as the soul in the head wasn't destroyed, he wouldn't die. However, the body was constantly injured, which would still have a great impact. Senior Brother Li Tian, wait here. I'll go save Senior Brother Dragon Cry. Yi Tianyun once again went to another space to save Heavenly Venerate Dragon Cry. Heavenly Venerate Dragon Cry's situation was much better. His recovery was amazing, and he could still persist under the fierce attacks. But if they continued like this, they wouldn't be able to pass through too many areas. Only Heavenly Venerate Yuqian was able to make it to the next great array. Furthermore, it seemed like he was about to break it. It seemed like Heavenly Venerate Yuqian was still much stronger. From this, it could be seen that this was a place that only upper Empyreans could survive. It would be difficult for other cultivators to survive here. Yi Tianyun was relying on his amazing divine inscription master skills to not be injured. Soon, Yi Tianyun dragged Heavenly Venerate Yuqian back and started treating them. I didn't expect that we wouldn't even be able to make it through here. It's just too difficult. One by one, they shook their heads and smiled bitterly. They had been to some ruins before, and the difficulty was either not as high as this one, or they had walked through ruins that others had explored before, so the danger was not as high. This was just the beginning, and they were already unable to attack. It was really embarrassing. It should be said that they were a little depressed. They thought that their strength was not bad, but when they came here, they realized that the gap between them was too big. They could not enter at all. Yi Tianyun also had a deep understanding of the situation here. This place was just too formidable. The territory of an ancient Empyrean really could not be compared to the present. Logically speaking, the further one went, the stronger it should be. He did not expect that an ancient level great array would win, and a complete victory at that. No wonder so many powerhouses would come over when these ancient ruins opened. These things far surpassed the current level. For such a situation to occur, Tianyun guessed that it was related to the materials. The current rare materials, compared to the previous world, could be found all over the streets. Thus, the great array formations or weapons that were refined far surpassed the current level. Because the materials for the current weapons and great array formations were insufficient, they could only choose to replace other materials to refine. This caused the effects to decline. It was not that the current level was inferior to the past, but that the materials were far inferior to the past. With the passage of time, it was normal for materials to become increasingly scarce. Wasn't the war that erupted in the divine realm in the past for the sake of seizing resources and materials? In the aspect of a divine inscription master, I still have some attainments. I shouldn't have any problems passing through here. Why don't you enter my inner world and wait until I need to fight, then I'll let you out. How about this? Yi Tianyun asked. Generally speaking, letting others enter one's inner world was quite dangerous. If there was internal damage, then the impact on him would be very serious. Similarly, if Yi Tianyun was attacked, then he would die together with them. No problem, it's decided. Without thinking too much, they chose to enter Yi Tianyun's inner world. They had all witnessed Yi Tianyun's ability just now. If it weren't for Yi Tianyun's help, they would still be trapped inside, constantly fighting against those great array formations. Yi Tianyun nodded and quickly summoned them into his inner world, which was the planet at the core of the 5 elements. After entering, they didn't feel anything wrong. In fact, the core of the 5 elements was equivalent to the balanced world outside. They couldn't sense anything wrong. Thus, they didn't feel anything was wrong. Rather, they felt comfortable and natural. After receiving them into his inner world, Yi Tianyun quickly moved forwards, avoiding the great array formations along the way. If he encountered one that he couldn't avoid, he would enter the void or break the array formation. Thus, there wasn't the least bit of pressure along the way. A 7th grade divine inscription master couldn't say that they could walk unhindered outside, but they could at least relax here. Soon, after breaking through the array formations, they finally passed through the long corridor and arrived at the great hall outside. It's really abnormal. There are 7 or 8 great array formations along the way. How can I even play? Yi Tianyun was a bit speechless. Even if it was to resist intruders, was there a need to be so abnormal? If he had judged wrongly, then his own people would have died in these great array formations. It was obvious that the master of this place was extremely suspicious and worried that someone would invade. Who knew that they would still die here? If they died outside, then wouldn't their efforts be in vain? Just as he was about to relax, a stiff voice suddenly sounded out in front of him, "Intruders, die." The 5 puppets rushed towards Yi Tianyun's side. It's really a wave after wave of trouble. Damn it, if I encounter this fellow's corpse, I will ruthlessly crush it. Yi Tianyun clenched his teeth. He released Empyrean Yu Qian and the others so that they could participate in the battle together. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.